All right, let's call the meeting to order. Back to the pledge of allegiance to the beginning of our so we'll jump right into budget time. Susie's first up.
Hello.
Afternoon.
Hi.
And we're on page 18. Binders.
There's a lot of 18s.
Yeah, there's a lot of 18s.
One wrong 18.
I'll tell you when to go, when we're figuring this out.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like.
I don't have
to.
Yeah, my 18 is a different 18, it's health insurance. All right, I want to look at this. All right, you go ahead, I think it's a pretty habit.
Like excess county card.
Oh,
Quite honestly, there's not a whole lot of changes from last year. I did increase the game and fish income a little bit. We are getting a little bit more money now for the year-round fish cleaning station for the expenses that we incur there. All the rest of the income pretty much stays the same. And then I dropped some of the expenses a little bit with the new barracuda grinders that we have in place. Our expenses have gone down. So I've decreased the budget items for plumbing, electrical, that sort of thing, because we haven't had to maintain them like we have in the past. We have $3,500 budgeted in there for snow removal in the winter time, and that is basically, we have more than that in there, but from year to year, we've been usually putting a $3,500 cap on anything relating to winter access, and then we go back if we need more. We haven't needed it the last couple of years, so we're showing a net income of $46.80 at the moment. Any questions on anything?
Any questions for Susie on the access?
One thing I should note, I think the city has increased their amount that they are giving us. I need to check in with them on that, so I've left that the same at the 6,000, but that might increase to 8. I need to verify that. And one other thing that we might look at, we have a lake access meeting tomorrow where they'll be able to review it. But I was asked that we add an additional $1,500 expense. We've been helping with the Lakewood Beach area, and the thought was to maintain with some additional sand next year and possibly the year after to keep that a viable beach for the public. So there might be an additional $1,500 expense that we'll put in there, but I won't know that till tomorrow. So, but we're sitting pretty good in that area. So.
Okay, any questions?
how much are they increasing theirs, or how much do you anticipate the city increasing?
I think it's 8 instead of 6. Yep. I think they match the hardcore.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, thanks Susie.
Yep, thank you.
Brad, you're up next.
How y'all doing? Mine, I guess I'll follow Susie, kind of similar. With the COVID this year, if you look at 20, there's some areas obviously that I'm reducing travel, and I go to Bismarck. I probably average a month, a couple of trips every couple of months to Bismarck. So a lot of the dollars that you see there is reduction-wise or travel. And going forward to 2021, it's going to be similar. I'm assuming so. So the dollars I've tried to reduce there. I kind of took the approach that I try to show some savings because of COVID, obviously, and then I've also kind of removed the. When I came aboard, it's been 2 years now as of May. When I came aboard, I kind of inherited it, and it's taken me a year to kind of find out where I need some dollars at, where I didn't need dollars. So I think I'm trying to get to a more level spot, and in that case, it's dropping a few dollars on the expense side. I originally gave Candy for the projected sales tax for this year. What did I have? I think I had 40,000, Candy, because I thought sales tax would project out to be a lot less. I double checked with Linda, and we're doing okay on the sales side. It doesn't quite work for tourism.
Oh, no, we're,
Yeah.
good.
But people that are here locally are still going local, and more are buying local to some degree. So I think, you know, we're trailing about a month. We haven't got June's numbers yet, so that would be a big indicator. But I actually was going to reduce that for this year, not 2021, but for 2020. But I left that where it's at. So the dollars that I'm showing are the revenue over expense, the surplus. And my hope is that we can put it into the reserve that I can use if needed going forward. Any questions? Both years it's been about an 8% reduction in my expenses as we go forward, but the same income. I have to reduce that at all, so that's up to you all, but I think where we're at. So I projected out sales tax in 2021 at 50,000. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. And sales tax, you know, it's not lodging tax. That's where Susie said, I suppose, is your biggest business.
Lodging, the restaurant.
And restaurants, you know. Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Looks good, Brad.
I wanted to also say, I was talking to Luke, because in the 2 years I've been here, you know, I've tried to concentrate on local companies, the Kojaks, and not the Ultragrains that are coming in looking for dollars. I've got a couple of companies right now that are looking for dollars that have come through the Commerce Department. We're in the finalists, or not finalists, we're in a semi-final stage with both of them. Previously, I hadn't heard from any of the ones that I posted. I've been a strong proponent of Commerce being more active in helping us to get them as a state and worry about the community later. They send it out to 50 communities who all compete against something that 48 was going to have a chance with.
Compete against each other.
Yeah, and you know, I'm trying to change that from my perspective. I'm on the Economic Development Council of North Dakota, on their board. We do a lot with commerce. We'll see what happens there. But these two projects, one's out of Grand Forks. I mean, that's confidential, but it would be a good UAS project potentially. Light manufacturing assembly. The other one is more of a controversial fructose type plant. Cargill down in Wapton would be similar to it. If any of you ever been down there, that type of plant. They want to be in the Corn Belt. The odds are against us, but we've got good transportation, we've got good gas, we've got excellent water. Adam, you've been on the Yellow board. I can't say much more than that. We'll see. The last thing I want to do is if the community thinks it's coming, because I don't know if that will, but I think that's important. Not to be in front of you guys enough. I should probably be a little bit more at times. Adam sees that, and I hope that he comes back and does what he can.
What I can.
Yeah, but and a lot of things you can't, obviously. But the UAS one, who knows? We'll see.
One question I have,
Yeah.
and I get it every other day. We're gonna get a meat locker in Pellet Lake.
You don't get as many calls as I do.
Well, I get more.
That's true. Last three.
I don't get a lot of calls, but I get a lot of
questions. They're probably your neighbors. I mean, the last three that I've had.
I go 100 miles and people are asking.
Yeah. They're working on, I can say this, they're working on it from a state level to try to do some things. Department of Ag. It's retail, not primary sector, not selling out the state. I don't spend a lot of time on it.
I mean, just get the meat plant going.
Yeah. New Rockford, you know, I just about went to the bison line and said, put something here. And you guys chop up beef or bison. Why couldn't they do that here? So
They can't find milk down there.
no, that's the issue. One thing you've heard me talk about every time I come in here, and before I came here, I had 8 years ago, and that's workforce. I mean, it's skilled workforce. A butcher is a very skilled worker, and that's not, you don't go to school to do that. Well, there are places that you can get trained, and you gotta work underneath somebody. So we've got to do a better job of convincing those for those jobs that we need. And
The rumor of somebody bought Skybirds and gonna open it up, that's BS, or
they're not working with me right now.
you haven't heard? That's the rumor on the street.
There's people that have talked about it, but no one's come and said, what do we have?
Yeah,
first of all, because it's not primary sector, I don't have a lot that I can do for them. We've got a few, and there's things we can do, and we can, as a board, we can make an exception maybe,
Great.
and try to do a non-primary sector business, you know, that we have done in the past,
I know
especially a non-competitive business like that.
Forward was involved with it before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we lost money.
But you provided a service for the people.
And
You wouldn't believe how many questions
yeah,
I get.
I know, and I've got the same one, so I'll fight hard to do that. I've talked with Commissioner Garing, the Department of Ag, so I've talked with him about it, and they're trying to do things, and it's a statewide issue.
It is.
Some communities, literally, that's what their dollars go to. I think one is Wishick in that area.
Bowden.
Bowden is another one, I've heard.
I was there yesterday morning with
Yeah.
the beef.
Yeah.
They've got a lady managing that place.
Your 2 years are out right now, it's just about, 2 years out, they're out to
August.
to
Next year.
2021 of August.
And there's lists on all.
Yeah. I'll leave you with one thing that I'm excited about. There's a compass product from a company called Golden Path Solutions, and it helps match up kids in their careers with technical careers and technical jobs, as well as professional. Ford was like, we made the decision, we're funding all of the schools in Ramsey County and outside of Ramsey as well. I mean, we're using dollars to get kids in any school that's in our workshop. And Jeff, I don't know, there's people that drive from Grafton to work here. There's people who drive from, who knows where. I know somebody from Bottle that comes, and farther. So we're trying to get most of the schools in our area to help match up their desires and their strengths and weaknesses with the right career. And then that'll get their sponsorship, the companies that we have in that area that need skilled workers, as well as professional workers, mostly benefit type careers, will be able to line up with their skills and it'll help them. So that's kind of a one in the state right now. We're the only region that's doing that. There's other companies that are doing it. So you'll hear a lot more on that in the coming 6 months. Adam's been involved with it. The last meeting we approved the dollars to go to that, and we'll see what it means. It's new. We'll see if it works, but hopefully it'll line up more people with the jobs that we have in our region and in the state.
Anything we can do to add value to things, add jobs for people coming off the farms. Not enough revenue out there. There isn't. I was at an auction sale today. It was quite sad. I mean, there's good equipment, not a lot of interest to buy it.
And there's a lot of sales. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Brett. Okay. Al, you're up.
All right, we have a hold even budget from last year, the same amount, $628,036. The reason we can do that, the only reason, is because a lot of our staff time is being taken up with COVID, and we got some CARES Act dollars to cover that. So that savings went in, so that's the only reason we can hold even. But that's a good thing. I think your mill levy actually went down slightly. It was 4.6, it went down to 4.4, but that's because the land value went up. So there we go. Do you have any questions on any of the line items whatsoever? Yeah, we're extremely busy with COVID. We are now the regional testing coordinator, plus we do all the contact tracing for our 4 counties. And it's a very, very busy time for us.
How are you sitting for staff now?
What's that?
How are you sitting for staff?
Well, we have 18 staff right now, with one on the way out the door tomorrow that is moving to Bismarck, so it'll be down to 17. We are short a nurse and an environmental health person. But as our board has heard me every year for the last 3 years, it's very difficult to get a whole position. Because grants are way down and the state is has cut back for the last 10 years on what they give us. I'm hoping with all this new visibility and the governor dumping all this stuff on public health, because public health can do everything, you know? That we might actually get just, you know, even just a little bit extra. I don't count on it, but it sure would be nice. We're wearing our people out, basically, trying to keep up.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, I sat in and listened in on the school board meeting today, and your guys' name was brought up quite often, although they have it listed as Ramsey County.
He was,
Public Health.
yeah, he was in our office this afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, so they have you guys tapped for a lot of different things.
Yes.
At the school and getting the school ramped up.
All the schools do, yeah.
Yeah, and you're one county, one district within a multi-layered stuff, so
Yep.
we will be busy.
Oh, yes. We have just, you know, a few schools in Ramsey, but every county, we have our county health nurse, Eddie, Pierce, and Benson are also in our health unit, you know. So our health nurses helping those people out, and of course we help each one of those nurses, and we're doing the best we can to keep up. They need to get these plans in fast. Most of the real decisions have to come from the school board, but they need guidance on which way to go.
Exactly, and not just the school, but us here.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So,
We've been trying to keep up, we're on that EMS call whenever it comes. We're trying to keep up with social services. We have a new, the state was so gracious in dumping housing for people that get COVID that are homeless on the locals.
yeah,
With no fanfare, here you go. They just dropped it on us. We're also working with social services and human services on that as fast as we can. It's, you know, you can only do so much so fast.
well, thank you for all you're doing, and we'll continue to lean on you for guidance as we move forward.
Okay. Not a problem.
Al, were you able to get final figures on how much of an increase all of those salaries that we approved was?
Yes. Let's see here. Where do I have it? Okay. Let's see here. Where did I put it? Okay, here we go. No, that's okay. So that's about 100. Exactly what I have. I wonder if I have that here.
I've got your sheet.
I got it here. I just got to find the right page.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay. For the health unit, it came to exactly 109,540. The other ones, the grant-funded ones, I believe was a little over our estimate. I think instead of 18,496, I believe it was 19 and change. So it was pretty close to what Sherry had determined. We might still be able to bring that down a little bit with some late coming stuff that's coming into WIC. I don't know that for a fact though.
Okay.
So,
So about $120,000.
exactly. Yep. And the reason we could do that, I say again, is because we're getting a lot of savings by getting paid by the CARES Act for all the COVID work we're doing, and it's, instead of going down, it's going up since the state has dumped this stuff on us. We spend a lot of time on COVID, and so that's being paid by CARES Act money, and so that savings we carry into next year, and it was an opportunity, and so we took advantage of it, and hopefully it all works out. So.
But all the district health units in North Dakota are doing the same thing, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you talked to the other counties?
Oh,
Have you met with the other counties yet?
which ones? In our health unit or what?
In our unit, yeah.
I met with Benson so far this morning, and they were good. Ramsey today, 1st of August is Eddie, and Pierce is the last Monday of July. So it's a special meeting they had to put together. They don't have 2 meetings a month during the summer, so I had to get what I could get. So, yep. And then the joint meeting will be October 6th at 8:30 a.m. I'll provide the auditor with all the official time, date, phone numbers, all that good stuff. And if there was any minor tweaks by any, before we get there. Okay?
Questions?
All right.
Seeing none, thanks, Al.
Thank you very much.
Lisa,
Yes,
you're after the zero.
okay, I don't know, do you want to start with superintendent schools?
Whichever you want to start on.
That's
Go
fine.
ahead.
Actually, superintendent schools has not changed at all. We did an annexation this year, it went through, but we didn't need any extra there. We get to, any questions on that one? We'll get to the treasures.
Can I ask one question, Lisa?
Yes,
So, when and if we know we're going to have the school district change, is that going to be something that's gonna fall on the county for costs, or is that usually kind of figured out within the school district itself, or how does that kind of play out?
it falls on the county. So I'm thinking, I don't know if we're gonna be into something next year.
Yeah, we just
Hoping
know-
I'll
we know
get
it's
to know
coming.
that prior so we could put it in. Some of it will, I can go after the DBI and they will reimburse us.
Okay.
That's pick and choose some things. But even if we can get, because we start with travel for committee members, if we can get some of that covered, that would be great. But there was some expense too with this, I guess, because we had, you have to advertise the petition and so there, and that's costly, but.
Just kind of curious.
And then with the treasurer's budget, the only thing that really went up was our service contracts. Some of the money was being covered by Steve and his IT budget, and he would like us to cover it. So that went up in the service contracts. Budget or the salaries of what was recommended to us. I always have a clerk come in, which is Lori Stubbe. Right now, when her coming in, she's probably working probably 5 or 6 days, but it's kind of nice to have a little bit of cushion on there in case something would happen. Any questions?
Questions? Looks great.
Thanks.
Looks good.
Good.
Okay.
Thank
you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going from one Lisa to the other Lisa.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello.
See if we can find your page here. Okay. You got it? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a lot of changes this year except for some of the museum rental space, COVID. We're not expecting, some of those larger parties or things that we generated, some revenue from the year before on that. Also, our major fundraiser, our gala, had to be canceled, so hopefully, coming into next year, we'll have a better handle on how to do some of those fundraisers. In person and more fun. I'm trying different things for fundraising. I had a Facebook fundraiser that went pretty well. I had a kind of a surprise. It ended up being someone that wanted a tour of the north, like Hamden area. Long story short, he ended up donating about $5,000 in stock to the organization. And that was just a fluke, but it was a well-needed fluke because, without any Gaelics fundraising things, it was pretty stressful. But we're doing okay. Maintenance wise, our roof started leaking again. It was caught quick though, and so it's not, the fixing should be done, can be done, but then just us not getting any outside help with that. Last night, someone decided to throw rocks through windows, so we have 2 broken windows at the museum. So we'll see how much that's gonna set us back, but it's not, our deductible's $2,500, I don't think it'll be that, so we should be able to just have that fixed, but it's just those expenses that come up with an old building and just life.
Is it on the back side of the building?
It's on the northeast side corner. It was someone on top of, Lakeside Nutrition or that apartment building complex. It's obvious that they just were up there and they threw rocks.
Is there
So-
enough lighting there?
Yeah.
Is there enough nighttime lighting on the building?
I think there was enough lighting. We just don't have any cameras on that side to show. And the police checked, there's really no cameras shooting right down that way to be able to see, and plus they were on top of that building.
They were on top of the building that's directly south of my place? Was on the
No.
other side?
Other side,
Yeah.
yeah. Like the old telephone company, that building, yeah. Lakeside Nutrition,
Lights don't cost too much, so
no,
sometimes that scares them off.
yeah, if it's bright enough, might be something to look into.
How do they gain access to the roof over another building?
I guess you can, there's a stair, there's a ladder that you can get right up there.
You'd be amazed, this town is full of spider monkeys.
Oh, yes.
They get on top of my buildings downtown too. And the way they do it is always remarkable. It's like jumping up onto an air conditioner, up onto a half ledge, walk down, hop up onto the actual roof.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, unfortunate, but, I'll find out tomorrow how costly that could be. But other than that, we did get PPP, for, some of the spring where I was there, but if we're not open, and the schools, I do a lot of things with schools, and not that that generates money, but it sure generates a lot of people in the building, and I get to do a lot of education that way, and that was just common. So, that's another thing I think this spring, or this fall, we could talk about if the schools are doing at home. We can social distance pretty easy in our building and be able to do some tours, small tours. So I'm just trying to think a little bit more outside the box this year. However, with downtown done, foot traffic has been much busier, which is a great thing. And we had the Aquanauts reunion, which went over, I think, really well. Lots of excited people, and they sure enjoyed the short time we had. So.
Good. Any questions?
Lisa, what was your request to the county last year? Do you recall?
It was the same middle level, whatever. I'm not good at that jargon. I'm sorry, that's not a strong point. But it was exactly the same.
Quarter of a mil.
Quarter.
So it's capital quarter of a mil.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions for Lisa?
Thank you.
Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the windows.
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer, but I guess it still happened.
Okay, Ron is not here right now, but Chris is. So we're going to Chris. You got all kinds of pages here. We're going to start at 14. That's right. All right, risk management first. Okay, start wherever you want to start.
Oh, I'm new to this, I don't really, sorry.
Oh, just give us an overview of what you got, changes, additions, subtractions, things of that nature on 3 different, what do you got? You got emergency management budget, you got risk management, and you've got, what's the last one?
First page, I'm sorry.
Hazardous chemicals.
There's,
Okay, let's start on risk management, I guess, that's our page 14.
okay, had a salary for risk management. The fixed charges, I didn't do any changes there. A little upgrade, $50 on the travel. Dues and fees, I went up just a little bit, or sorry, dues and registration is up a hair. Miscellaneous, due to prior costs, I went up about $100 on that. And, I guess it's
Okay.
that. On to the next page. Little difference there, little subtraction on the salary amount. Fixed charges, that was up just a little bit. Halftime salary, of course, doesn't pertain. Travel, up just a little bit. Telephone, no change. No change on postage, supplies, utilities. Up just a little bit for the operations center as we kind of get closer to rolling out siren. Just a little bit more there. Parts, labor, radio maintenance, no change, and no change with the capital reserve fund. Off to one of the rescue unit, nothing there. No change for the miscellaneous and other than the phone system duties there. And just a little bit of increase, of course, the IT stuff with computer software is that's for just about everybody. And then I put in the budget for some radios for the siren project.
Okay.
So this dollar amount here that you have on the end of 35, tell me based on what we have in this part of the budget, how we get from 98,000 to 162, I don't, oh, is it radios?
The radios, yeah. The radios.
Okay.
So is that radios for our office here then?
That's correct.
So
That's for the EOC.
Okay, so the EOC doesn't have a cost share or a pay thing like, or a grant thing like the state's doing for.
Correct.
We have to pay for those up, PSAP costs then, huh?
Correct. Currently, there's no grant work or anything for that. Of course, it all goes to fire departments currently and everyone else. Once that gets reworked, we might have an opportunity to apply for a grant for emergency managers. And I just was hoping we have the money available so if we can purchase them, we can maybe get a reimbursement or a fraction of those radios knocked off.
Yeah, the hope would be that the next legislative session will be able to kind of get in their ears and say, hey, why was this missing?
Yeah, there's
Or not included.
Maybe wishful thinking.
Yeah, probably, but it never hurts to ask. It's good to budget it,
How
it's
many
good to budget it to be
radios,
safe.
how many radios is this, Chris?
Sadly, that's about 4.
4?
Yeah.
I presume this is one-time cost, it's not?
Sadly, it's not.
It's not, so this is gonna be an annualized thing?
Currently, there's, I believe, 12 radios, if I do recall correctly, there's 12 radios, and I figured to operate at the minimal as I possibly can. 4 would be required, and maybe in the future, another 4. You know, maybe get at least 8. And then hopefully, the rest of them can kind of kick in like a PSAP, of course, would come from 911, and some other radios hopefully would fall under fire department's purview or something. They could just leave here.
Okay, and then, 36, hazardous chemicals.
Hazardous chemicals, that one, not a lot of change, a lot of that stuff. This up just a little bit for the travel, of course. The equipment is still the same. Office supplies for that as well is the same. I did put up on training. I'd like to attend some more training that is out there. That way we can get that covered, so that went up a little bit as well, but nothing great.
Questions? Questions? Okay, being none, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Get that nice sheet here. Alright, we'll go back to Rhonda.
You must be running ahead of schedule.
Yes, we are, it's like a miracle.
It is a miracle. Thank you for having me. I have a lot of information and I know that we won't get through it and that's not my intent, but I just want to give you information about funding of social services. Again, this year, as we, in 2020 and 2021, we hope not to increase our indirect spending. There is, kind of the short story is counties are responsible for transitioning costs. We've talked about that. So in years past, we've left open a line item in case that we need, at the end of the year. We're going to try hard not. I hope that everyone, though part of all of the paper here is that you'll take a look at what indirect costs are and how we got there with the countywide cost allocation, which is about 2 years behind. So for 2021, we would be looking at actually 2018 countywide cost allocation. So, yeah, and we do have, if you're interested, there's a Zoom call about what is a countywide cost allocation and how that works. So I'll just, I do have a breakdown here of all the indirect costs we do each month for our board. And this is, Candy, this is yours. And so, I'll let you kind of, I think I gave you all of them. I figured out the best thing to pass paper around. But at any rate, I just wanted to say that we've done a lot of things with the help of the Association of Counties and the legislature to lower property taxes. You know, starting out way back when, in 50-50, 103, when they had exceptional funding, and Ed remembers that when they just didn't fund it. It was, if you were 10 mills over, they just said, oh yeah, we know that. So we got that funded. The next step was the whole, we went to funding how much we spend, we get back. We've been through that, which is not the fairest thing either. So our current formula, and this just kind of goes through it, and I did, for those that were at, I know you have a, I'll give these to you, and I know that it's probably, like I said, the best thing. I do have sanitized hands, but oh, you got one. So if you want to take a look at how we got to where we're at, that will be helpful. So the 4 counties, we base our indirect is paper, cars, anything that we use. There's a list on one of the handouts.
Yeah, it's on this big one someplace. I remember.
Page, if you want to look at handout number 3, on page, they're not page, but it says there's a big indirect cost, and then a page after it, if you find indirect costs in this handout that looks like this, attachment 3. If you look at indirect costs, that's the kinds of things that are on that budget sheet that I gave you for July. So if you look at the definition, it's salaries, benefits, and operating costs incurred in providing those goods and services. Our salaries are direct, however, you know that. So if you look at the next page, it kind of gives you a list of those transitioning supplies. And the hard part about this is a lot of the indirects, you know, go up in price. Facilities, rent, we do the cost of little rent with the countywide cost allocation for our building or for our space in Willett County, they rent 2 buildings, or they rent 1 building. So if you look at, I'm being really quick because I know you can't read all this. So if you're interested in reading about that, if you want to really see what the indirect costs are, if you look at the first sheet I gave you, you can see what you're paying for. Only you're not paying for it. All of that money has been given back to the county. So our zone decided to keep it all in one place. So Candy has that to fund, and we spend out of that fund for indirect costs. That's the social work version of indirect costs. So,
Yeah, just, can I pitch in?
yes, please.
We had a long discussion at our last social services meeting. Obviously, Rolette County has been kind of squeamish about what's going to happen with indirect costs. But we're running under indirect cost budget right now, so we're doing okay across the board. But the question would be, and Representative Westland, who's on our zone board, said, you know, we're going to obviously have to address some of these things going forward. Because the problem we're going to run into is if you look on the sheet here where they talk direct to indirect transitioning costs, right now they're picking up 100% of the direct to indirect transitioning costs. When this, no, 2020, correct? The year after, I can't remember now. Is that what you?
Well, it would be 2021.
2021, we will have to pick up 75% of it instead of them picking up all of it. It'll be on the 25% countywide cost allocation. And at that point, if you figure that out on our indirect cost formula this year, we would be behind budget by around $10,000 to $12,000 for just Ramsey County. So we would then have to chip in that money to make up the difference on the indirect cost. Representative Westland seemed to be of the opinion that that's something that they're going to look at pretty strongly because they realized that the concept behind this was to take the costs off the table for the counties, and the formula's there to take the costs off of the counties, but it's not functioning quite perfectly. So they're going to look at that, but at the end of the day, Rolette County was just really concerned because, you know, they've got some costs there compared to us because, you know, our building is in pretty decent shape and everything like that. They've got stuff that, you know, has come up to additional costs that are incurred because they became part of the zone with us because they didn't, you know, we had to buy all that software and stuff up there and that came out of their costs. But they're still running under budget for this year too. And I made a statement, I think it's a good statement. All those indirect cost dollars are still coming from the state. It's just 25% of them would flow back to the county to pay those costs. So if we did have a balance there, technically that's our money. If we went under budget in those small indirect cost areas. But there's still that 75% sitting there in the zone, so if there's money still sitting there, I made the statement that, you know what, we're in this together. It's all state money flowing back. If we have to throw some of those indirect dollars that came from the state that are technically under our name to help pay Rolette County to, if they run under this year or something, we'll figure out how to make it happen. Because if you look at across the zone, we're running under budget on the indirect costs. So.
Thank you. I think that it's pretty difficult. Rolette County is looking at, they would have liked us not to have voted at our second zone meeting to hold all the indirect reimbursement here in Ramsey County. The law states that, I mean, it's pretty iffy. It can either go back to each host county or it can go to, or excuse me, each county and the host present them bills. I know that that's been a rub for Alec Albert. I guess my thought was we need to have control over our spending, and I mentioned at our social service board meeting, one of the things that happened is we had staff people ordering $500 with a triple kit, something that said Rolette County, and used in the 70s thinking they needed them, and it just got thrown in the garbage because someone looked at it and went, who uses triple kit? And so, I mean, things like that happen when you're trying to work as one, when you have 5 different sites that you're trying to manage. So that's been an issue. I don't know, you know, as far as property tax, I can't imagine, and I you know, obviously don't control the legislature, that if they're giving us total relief for our property taxes. Now, there are some counties that are paying, their indirects are not covering, and they're already paying, they have levied. I believe Burley levied, and maybe Cass did. You know, we're gonna need new cars. How do we split that cost up with the five offices in the 4 different counties? So, I mean, there's just a lot of unanswered questions, and it's a work in progress. But for 2021, I mean, we're gonna try to make budget. I hope, I mean, if more pipes break or more water leaks in Rolette County, we won't make it with their direct. And,
They're still hung up on that?
yeah.
Well, and add those two, that part of Rolette's concern, and it's a reasonable concern, is the general fund mill levy caps at 60 mils.
Right.
Here, we aren't concerned with that because we're at what, 40 or something? So we can always levy a little additional money if we have to make things work. They're capped out. Their bill's like,
21 grand.
yeah, it's 18, I think, Alex.
I think, yeah.
So they're capped out, so their concern is, if we run over on indirect costs, where's the money gonna come from? Because we do not not have the levying authority to go find those dollars anywhere. And it's a reasonable concern, I understand where they're coming from. So, like I said, we gave them a little bit of, you know, we'll figure it out for this year, we're gonna have to work with the legislature at the very least, if they don't put additional dollars in, that maybe we would have to levy, they're gonna have to put something in that says, if a county's at their 60 fund mill levy cap, that the state's gonna find a way to chip in to cover an indirect cost overrun, so that the county doesn't sit there going, what are we gonna do?
I'll tell the rest of the commission, I missed that meeting, had something come up, I just couldn't get back to it. But you handled it in the right way, Ann, you did. I mean, there's gonna be that money there, but we'll see how the rest of the year goes, and then decide then how to handle it, I guess.
I think it's really unfortunate, you know, the spirit of 21-24 was to, of course, property tax and to have equity across zones because there wasn't the same services in Dunn County as in Ramsey County or vice versa. And it really, with the indirect cost discussion, it really doesn't do that because Dunn County could drive old cars that break down along the road and Cass County could have new cars. But it's the funding formula, I think it was the best they could come up with, and obviously there are problems with the funding formula, but hopefully we can work through I think it'll be a hot topic this legislative session, hot topic as for social services, probably not for anyone else, but so it'll be interesting. I just tried to pick out some of the handouts that give you the top overview of how we got to where we are, and kind of did a brief summary on the front page of there have been lots of efforts across so I don't want to dog the bill that we got, the current law, but there are some issues.
Well, we'll hammer it out.
Yes.
And 21-24 does have some language I found, and I just parked and ran in here, but there is language that talks about if you can ask DHS for, but I don't have that at this point.
Yeah, and that would be the hope, that is if they hit their indirect cost cap and they didn't have the ability to levy for it, that DHS would have enough common sense to say, okay, we're gonna figure out, as long as it's not like $100,000 or something like that, it's $10,000 or something, they're gonna find a way to
Please
know.
don't tell DHS that, right? They just get their,
Yeah.
that helps out, right?
Yeah, no chance, I think, we lots of reports go, I don't
Yeah,
think
but,
that
you know,
we can.
Representative Westland sat on, you know, he's on
Human
the
services.
funding, human services portion of it, so he obviously is pretty intricately, knows the bill back and forth, and he said, it's definitely something they're gonna look at. So it's just something we gotta keep in contact with them and keep working on it, and I have a feeling we'll figure out a way to make it work. But at this point, at least for fiscal this year,
I appreciate you chiming in, thank you. So I don't have, I normally wouldn't come and to request no money, but we hope not to request money, but that's why you have the big packet of paper, we might.
Perhaps
So I
you get
hope-
Christmas then, or?
Yeah, no, I don't know, I probably won't be here till Christmas, but yeah. Thank you.
Any questions on indirect costs or anything like that from our members and stuff? Okay, thanks, Ron, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So much.
Yep.
Hey, you're still right ahead, you're ahead, good deal. Hopefully I say your name right, Ignacio or Ignacio? Ignacio, right?
It's probably more correct to say Ramsey.
Ignacio, there you go. My Spanish is a little suspect.
Yeah, that's fine.
Welcome. Go over your budget here, let's get to our page here for you.
Sure, I'll go over the changes then. So, well, the budget mostly remains the same, with its minor changes. $500 increase is requested for publishing, taking it from $500 to $1,000. This is based on 2019 publishing and printing expenses. An increase for education and training has been requested from $400 to $2,400 for both director and children's librarian who attend the NDLA conference and its membership fees of various library organizations. This is based on 2018 expenses. 700 increases requested from periodicals from 1,800 to 2,500 to account for all the newspapers and magazines. This is based on 2019 expenses. And we are requesting a technology increase to account for the Biblioteca maintenance annual support fee. So basically, we take technology budget from 4,000 to 8,000, and we're hoping to take those 4,000 from our e-collections budget, bringing it to 8,000 and bringing the e-collections budget to 4,650. So in terms of those expenses, the increase would be 3,200.
We're actually, from the county perspective, down just a little bit. We're just splitting it, so that the city's picking up 3,000, we're dropping 3,000, pretty much an equal split.
The city's figures like the very top.
And we're at 94,147.
Okay? Board, any questions?
Looks very good.
Oh, I think we should go with it. Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Pretty short. Is there anything else you need to know?
No, you're free to go if you want to go.
Or you can stay.
If everybody else is going. Sarah's not here, but it appears we have airport authority, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we'll let you go then.
Okay. We're having a little snafu with our budget. I don't know if Candy's made you aware of it, but Jeff and I and the rest of the board had a meeting on Tuesday. Yesterday. Yes. Monday. Yeah,
That's okay.
Anyway, our manager's been on maternity leave and in strict isolation since about the second week in March. So we had, when I sent her an email asking her if she had done any work on the budget, when I found out that the budget was due, after Jeff informed me a week ago, Monday afternoon,
Yeah.
and she had not started on it, so I went up to the city office, talked to Terry Johnston, who usually does a lot of the work on this, and I have been led to believe, although there is no paperwork involved because she's got our airport computer at home, I can't find anything in the file, so I was under the impression from our past manager that we were getting 3.5 mils. Now I find out after our meeting on Monday, and in conversation with Jeff and checked with Candy, we were only getting 3.02. So right now Terry Johnson is not in town, he's gone for the week. So this will all have to be rehashed next week, but what I am proposing is we stay at the 3.02, which I believe the total would be $129,238 approximately. And that was just because the value of the mill's gone up a little bit, so.
And Dennis, if you don't mind, I put that number in,
Yes,
and I did print some of those copies out,
okay.
so I will pass those out.
Okay, so you have amended ones then?
Yep, I have amended ones, and I have enough for you and Roger as well.
Perfect. Now this will probably be changed again
It'll
next
probably
week
be changed.
on the city side because we're going to be working at about a $20,000 deficit.
Yep.
So we'll figure out where to save the money, where it's coming from, and I'll preface it by saying we were just granted a CARES Act grant to the tune of $1.35 million for operations and maintenance. So if we have to work at a deficit for the next couple of years, I understand that completely. And hopefully our manager will be back on the 3rd of August. I had some communication with her, and this will all be her baby.
So, Dennis is our board chairman, and he's worked above and beyond what that's required. So I thank him and Scott Cruz. Roger Hogan's our other board member, and put a lot of time into this as well. So I thank those gentlemen for being here.
If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them to the best of my ability.
I think there was there a couple extra copies there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can give Roger and Dennis a copy of those as well. And basically, Dennis, what I did is I put that number in, that new number, and then it automatically, Terry had the formulas all figured out, so it all figured out all the way down. So you're absolutely right, though. It does come out with a deficit. So we'll have to either make some adjustments
In our defense, the big issue we're going through right now is we had a part-time manager the last 2 years, so he was getting no benefits. Now with the full-time manager back on board and she gets the full package, there's $15,000 of the $20,000 deficit right there. So we're gonna have to come up with that someplace, and I'm sure we will. I've been led to believe, and I have a meeting on Thursday with a couple of engineers that have been working on this CARES stuff with us, that the money we're getting on this CARES Act we'll be able to use for operations and maintenance, and that also includes salaries. So I'm assuming, my fear is this though, guys and ladies, when this is over, and this is a 4-year deal, this CARES Act, so we're gonna have a nice little cache of money to work with for 4 years. Then we go back to normal, and my fear is that when we do go back to normal, the budgets are gonna be a nightmare. Because when you get, and you guys all know what I'm talking about, when you get extra money to play with, and there's no reconciliation at the end because it's basically grant money that doesn't have to be repaid. When you get to the point where that grant money runs out, yeah, then it hits the wall, so to speak.
Start to gorge yourself on other people's money.
Right, so I know, and if we don't use this, we lose it, so, and we have the need, so I mean, it's not like we're not going to use this. Yeah, I'll try to do my best along with our board to see that we use it expeditiously, but we're gonna use it.
Mills?
And,
Can be a.
oh yeah, and I don't know if you guys have been made aware of it, but that was part of what brought this on. By century code, we can ask for 4 mills from the county, but at this point, we're not going to. And we don't have any plans on in the near future either. But just to be prepared a few years down the road that we could come knocking on the door a little bit early and ask for a little bit more.
I think small incremental increases would be very appropriate throughout that time period, just for that.
Just so we don't have that brick wall to hit when we get there. Exactly.
That brick wall and that care package runs out. And Roger and Dennis maybe haven't mentioned, but there's a lot of projects and needs out at the airport that I don't want to say has been neglected, because we do get by with a lot of things that make do with what we do get. But there's some enhancements that we can make with that money, and it'll be put to good beneficial use, and we'll be able to accomplish some really nice things and make our good airport even that much better.
Just a little background. Our airport operates under the same rules and regulations as the large airports. We are all CFR 139 airports. So all the federal regulations and standards that they have in Chicago, Atlanta, New York, we have to abide by the same ones. And we're limited because of our ridership right now. We've been getting $150,000 a year to use for additional expenses that we can come up with. If we can get our ridership up to 8,000, which we were well on the way to doing this year, that would open up another $600,000 to us. Because of the COVID thing, our ridership went down to nothing. Now people are flying again, but we're not going to make that threshold at the end of the year. So we're kind of tongue-tied on that, in that point too. Somewhere down the road, we'll hit that threshold, because people had started flying out of Dells. Like we were averaging over 700 a month up until this happened. First month out, we went down to 17. So that's
Fantastic little airport, and as soon as people start traveling again, it'll start generating that type of ridership. But
we appreciate the support we get from you guys. Don't ever be afraid to ask us what's going on, and if you need a report, let one of us know. We'll gladly come and explain some things to you. So hopefully.
Have you guys as a board determined like how many, I don't know what you want to say, deferred maintenance or whatever you want to say, what kind of projects you would put those dollars towards? I mean, what kind of dollar figure you're looking at, just out of curiosity?
Okay. The other part of this CARES package, we were one of 27 airports in the United States because we had no federal debt. They used a divider of 0. All the other airports had to do a 2.5. So along with that, this 1.352 that we're getting for operations and maintenance was part of a $16,888,000 grant that we have achieved. Now the FAA does not know how to use this and how we're going to use it and how to make it work. So right now, the only restriction, we still don't know if we have that extra money. But if we do, we have to use it in 4 years. And that's part of the meeting coming up on Thursday, where we're meeting the engineers, because we have what's called a capital improvement plan. We're 10 years out. And if we we could use all of this 16 million and not even get 5 years out. That's the need we're at as an airport. One of the great problems we have is our terminal at this point is no longer big enough. I mean, those are the kinds of things you get when you have growth. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. We have to do some work on the runways. All our lighting needs to be replaced. That's several $1 million. We have no security cameras right now. FAA and SkyWest aren't aware that we don't have security cameras watching the plane that sits overnight on our tarmac outside the terminal. I mean, those are the issues we've got. So it's not like we're flush by any means.
No, so what you're telling me is you're gonna have no problem spending it.
Absolutely.
That was what my question was, because I was leading to the point of, those additional grant dollars, whether they come through the CARES Act or if we hit that ridership goal, are fantastic, but at the end of the day, we gotta fund the baseline regardless. So whatever the cost is gonna be to run the airport, we've gotta fund. We can't just say, let's take an extra $100,000 and offset the cost. We need to stay on that same incline baseline. And
Jeff may not be aware of this, but I just got the word today, we got approved on our grant 39, which is the apron and taxiway. We're gonna have some cement work, some repaving, desperately needed in the tie-down area. So that's 1.6 that we're gonna get. And it just happened, I just got the word today, so that's a bonus for us too. It took 2 years to get to this point on that grant.
That is good news, thank you.
any additional questions, I guess, for the gentleman from the airport board?
Thank you both for
Seeing
coming.
none, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Where'd Sarah go? Hi, you're up. We're ahead of schedule, it's like American. Okay.
All right, so if you can see our budget for Ramsey County Extension. Pretty much, the first two are our agent bill and my salaries, which are pretty much set by the state. The next one would be Cindy Olson's salary. And then Lauren, we did put her down for a $1 raise, and Candy, thank you for giving me that information today. And then the next one would be fixed charges, which would be Cindy's insurance, and that was just kind of an estimation, unfortunately. But, and as far as the rest, travel, we did add in just a little bit. I don't know if you've been following our Facebook page, but Bill's been traveling around to some farms these past 2 days for our achievement days. So things are a little bit different, but he said it's been fun. So the judge is actually up there deliberating winners for all those categories. I'm excited to hear that.
That was the coolest thing ever.
I know. It's got like an old Norman Rockwell
Yeah,
type.
I thought it was so cool. The achievement days were held on each individual's farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Judging hogs and cows and chickens and ducks and llamas.
Yeah.
Some of the different livestock was really cool.
There's some
Yeah.
llamas involved?
Yeah, there was a llama and an alpaca.
Yeah.
So super fun. I know that we'll probably integrate something like that in the future with, they have to turn in a record book. So we're kind of thinking of maybe integrating like a little visit to the farm, and I hope I get to go too because it looks super fun.
Yeah.
We'll have to add that in there, but. And then as far as equipment, dues and registrations, that stayed the same. Office supplies, miscellaneous. And then you can see the total budget at the end. We do receive 4 mills, and we're pretty well under that. If anybody has any questions or
Questions? I guess. Anybody? Looks good to me. I was just gonna ask the question, I'm trying to remember exactly, what's the cost share that we're working under now? It's 50% of all of salaries and health insurance, correct? Can you throw that back? Because I can't remember, because we flipped and then we went to a different setup.
I think extension is both your and Bill's, insurance is covered 100% by state.
Yes,
Since-
that,
Yep,
they have changed, exactly.
so,
I think it's like 55, 45.
Was it wages and retirement was what we were covering, not 50%? I can't remember, but it used to just be 50% of salaries, and then we went to 60/40. And then we went back to a different setup.
I happen to leave that sheet up in the office.
The only reason I ask is that I'm just trying to think ahead, because the next legislative session is gonna happen next year. We know money's gonna be tight. We know they went to that 60/40 split before.
Yeah, so they'll go back.
So they might go back to that, and that would be a July 1st start, so that'll be halfway through our year. So I just wanna make sure we have enough money in there covered. I mean, we'll have overrun on the budget, I'm sure, sitting in their fund, but it might not hurt to stick a little bit on just to be safe in case they do make a change and we don't get shorted.
Can't believe they do that to us in the middle of the year.
Well, it's July 1 start,
Back
so
on
that's,
there.
but if the extension's budget goes July, it's regular state budget, I would guess, so. So there would be a change mid-year. I just wanna make sure we have our bases covered, just in case that were to happen.
Yep.
That is one place where that could make a pretty drastic difference pretty quickly.
I have the budget sheet right here that we got from the state. I can just open it up.
good luck with that down here. Remember, we're in a fallout shelter.
We got some Wi-Fi in here.
They just have our salary. Estimated county share 50% of salary.
Okay.
It's pretty much.
Maybe the change was 50/50, but then they put in the retirement again. I can't remember, we've changed like 3 times. So I'm just trying to remember exactly what they did before, because I have a feeling that might be something they might toss around.
And it says a 2.5% raise was added for budgeting purposes, although the final amount will be dictated by the 67th legislative assembly. Which,
All of that.
hopefully.
Okay, well, you got that. Okay, any additional questions? And that's a change we can make. Okay, any additional questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we've got, nothing else before the 5:30. Can we jump in? Oh, you got to do yours? Well, let's get yours done. Did we do some of yours?
Just a few.
Oh, we got more.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, page 13. Here would be the insurance portion, like the building, the vehicles. And didn't increase too much. I just changed the building portion of it, because I believe we just got our bill, it was like $7,300. But they were going to come out and assess, before COVID hit, so, there may be an additional, once they go out and look at buildings and things like that, but we've been trying to do everything through email. I think she has pretty much everything she needs except for just to physically now go take a look at each individual to make sure that everything's okay.
So that's under the state fire.
Yep.
So that's all of our building insurance and everything?
Yep.
Still quite affordable.
Yep.
Considering how much infrastructure we got sitting around.
Which figure are you looking at? 26?
Number, top one, yeah.
10?
At the 10,000. Just to carry, because we haven't had the buildings gone over in years. There hasn't been anybody on site, so, and obviously, replacement costs, I'm sure they've had an escalator in there year over year, but once you look at it, you might say, maybe they're a little ballpark, it might cost us some money. I'm sure.
So that's a total bill, 10? For this building, bill?
That's
It's
totally,
it's
Huh?
extremely,
totally broken.
like, if we were to go through like just flat out, not go through state fire or tornado, it'd probably be $100,000.
Is there a high, we have our coverage? Is there a high deductible?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there any way, is
She
this a high
hasn't
deductible
told
plan?
me, and I have a call into her for, she never called me back.
I just see that figure next week.
$10,000 with the premium with $100,000 deductible.
Yeah, really?
So, she is supposed to call me tomorrow.
Kevin,
Ken, did you have search and rescue on your list?
Sorry, question, I was thinking about that.
yeah, we should have that looked at too.
We don't have that on our policy?
We just got inspected again for that because through the treasurer's office I had to do, somebody came up and wanted the square footage and all that, so.
But that was to get her information.
Okay, yeah.
So now
I
she's
know
gonna
that was done
physically,
here 3 months ago, 2 months ago?
Yeah, like I
Roughly?
said, it's all before
Okay.
COVID.
So that's not, yeah.
so she has the information for the basic
Yeah.
stuff, but she needs to go on site and take a visual look and just, but.
Because she's gonna take her own pictures, her own, like,
Search and rescue's in on this figure then?
Yes. Not their equipment, just the
not,
building.
not just the building.
Just the building, because the county owns the building.
Yeah, any
Search
further
and
we
rescue
also
has insurance on all their stuff inside here, they take care of that themselves.
You're right.
I think what Ed's,
was like,
I think what Ed's getting at is there a way he can buy this insurance?
really?
Yeah,
Ooh,
but,
Okay.
yeah.
that's reasonable, which is great.
Legal publications, I reduced that because we're, 3-day-a-week paper. We're using other resources, we're doing a lot of online, this is basically publishing of the minutes, which is required. We're doing a lot of social media to put things out there where people aren't looking at the newspaper. So I dropped that. The dues, that would be for the North Dakota Water. It's been $200 for ever. Then the next page is postage. Yep, we got lots of page 13s. Postage, I reduced that because next year is not an election year, so I always reduce. Copier, I left. We do a lot of scanning, emailing. I think the tax director's office might be a different copier. He hasn't got back to me yet, so that should reflect in our quarterly or monthly payment too much. Then the next one is election expense, and I dropped that down to the 5,000 because it's non-election year. I have to leave something there in case we have training of some sort or need to purchase something.
Good deal.
Good.
Lots of savings.
Yeah. Then I go to page 17, I believe. Yep. That's like mental health, coroner, audit fees. Pretty much left all those the same. The audit done for 2019 has all been done through email, telephone, scanning. Very, very good group of people that they're very, very understanding if you're not reading their language right, what they're looking for, they, they'll just give you a quick call because they're not all working in the office. They're all working from home still. So there will be a savings this year because there's no travel for them to come here, so. Then we go to page 8, and then there's a couple different pages of 18s. Cemetery, that one comes from Kevin's. I'm not sure if that's the page. Yeah, there's a couple different. Cemetery, that's what Kevin budgets for. County fair, they always request 1 mil. And then the county building improvements. I got a quote for a new phone system, which is roughly $60,000. We're getting to the life, way past the life on some parts of our phone system, which thankfully the Dakota telephone has made it work still.
Technology has surpassed what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do believe that, is this gonna go through the IP? Is it gonna go?
Probably.
Yeah.
The telephones?
Mhm.
Do they have any
So-
telephones out there?
Do they what?
Do they have any telephones in the office? Do they have something better than we have? They do?
That's this.
You sure?
Because if we were ever, like,
You just throw mine out the door.
I wanted it so that if we ever had to do where people had to telework again, that they could just take their phone right from their desk, go home, plug it into the internet, and they get their phone home. Like, that's how the new stuff would work. Also, the big thing was to have, so that the bigger offices like to do auto attendant, so that one office wouldn't constantly be getting where we're, right now, district health and social services are the only two that have it because we're about at max capacity on
Yeah, and we,
what we have out there.
Candy and I have had a discussion about, having auto attendant for the whole courthouse. So that instead of the auditor answering the call and then having to tell them or redirecting them to one of the 14 or 15 offices in here, you would call and it would automatically auto attendant up and say, if you know your extension or whatever. So it would make things a little bit easier if we take their phone call.
That's why I asked the question at the law enforcement center, we couldn't get that a year ago. Didn't have it. We didn't have it out there. We couldn't get it.
It's part of your phone system. And if you don't have the capacity within it,
They couldn't do anything for us at that point. But I think they can now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I've been after it for a couple of years to get this, so.
It's too bad we couldn't justify it under COVID, send people home kind of pandemic and get a CARES Act grant for it.
Well, I was gonna ask what do we do with the county fair money then we didn't use this year? Just stays in the treasurer,
No, they got it. They get their 1 mil.
but they didn't use it, right?
Well, the county fair uses that money.
You
You
still
know, they have that
building
that
payment,
expense
building
out of that
maintenance.
building and,
Yep.
Lights, heat.
lights, heat.
And then the other portion of that was, the visitation room over here across the hallway, the historical room.
Roger talked about.
Roger would like to have their own
Entrance.
entrance.
He's got that in his budget already.
That's the other portion of this.
It's part of the building.
And he's been trying to get quotes from the asbestos and some other.
Yeah, that's reasonable to have a pool open that way, you can utilize both rooms at the same time.
Well, and it would free up that room for a lot more things. Let me see, County Park, let me see, that was Susie. Advertising,
Another 18?
you missed
Another 18.
I trust you.
Worry about the Oasis and Social Security.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
$1,000.
You know, it says $1,000 for advertising. We've never used anything out of that account. I mean, I could just as well get it because I don't.
Advertising.
And I looked back in the system of if there was anything ever taken out of it, and you know,
So all the notices that get put in the paper get taken out of publishing? So like when we need road ditches mowed or bales
well,
removed?
that comes out of,
That comes out of Kevin's
Yeah.
budget? or-
Yeah.
More like surplus sales.
yeah, that
Plus
comes
some
out of,
fundraiser.
like publishing and. So,
Job notices?
all we, like for job notices now, all we do is put a little,
Yeah.
we don't put the whole spiel in
Yeah, you
here
don't
because
put the whole
it's,
description, you
it's,
just put it in, this is the job, and go to the Ramsey
Yep.
County website for information and
yeah,
application.
you know, so with that, I mean, I could just as well get rid of it because as far as I can go back on the computer, nothing has ever been taken out of it, and it's just $1,000 that goes back into the general fund at the end of the year, so. Yeah. The Oasis Social Security, I bumped that up a little bit in case, you know, county hires any more employees.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's pretty good. Health insurance. I have nothing.
We've received nothing?
Yeah.
It's gonna go down then, I bet. Good call.
I made several phone calls.
We're at 272 through 7 months?
Yep. And actually, this page, like, tells us where we're sitting at.
So that's another page 18, one with the
Call it 18 B.
566, 500 on it?
I got it.
Yeah.
The dog page.
I just did 10% because, I mean, just to put a dollar figure out there so that I had something to work with, right?
Sure.
You know. I did strongly encourage them to change our renewal date from July to June, so that I'm not put in this kind of situation for next year. He has made that change, so I patiently await my email.
You actually think you're gonna be able to speed them up to get quotes on them?
Next year.
Hang around for that, don't want to see that.
Yeah.
They're always late
Yeah.
again.
This is really behind the, and I don't know if it's the whole COVID thing, I don't know. that. Then I have miscellaneous general, page 19. I have miscellaneous general, planning and zoning, home rule. Planning and zoning, I decreased because we haven't spent anything this year. Unless I should just leave it the same. I don't know where we,
That's all general.
yeah. Do we know, Jeff, where we sit with finishing that?
Be some dues or some meeting expenses and publishing, I suppose. But that should come out of, I would think, this year. So,
Out of the 12,000?
yeah.
And then there's a little bit of a breakdown of what some of the bigger things that come out of miscellaneous general.
I think that planning and zoning should be a whole department. And the number of requests that come in sometimes, and you know, you look at a lot of counties and they have planning and zoning departments within their department structures.
That's all my news. Yep. Yep.
Just in time.
My clock still says 5:29. I'm rolling with it. It's just a little fast. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Sorry. We have a motion and a second. Any additions or corrections for on the minutes? Excuse me. Hearing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Approval of the agenda, anything to add? We got a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries and the agenda is approved.
I'll say that.
Okay,
Lane is up.
Steve, you're up.
All right, yes, start with the IT budget, which is pretty much the same as last year, but I guess increased the salary recommended there, and the maintenance was decreased though, based off of passing individual departments' maintenance back to their departments. Previously, their software and everything used to be bought when they got their computer, just in one lump sum, but now everything's going more subscription based, so it's an annual salary or annual expense versus a one-time upfront fee. So that's why that is lower.
Okay.
Any questions, I guess?
Questions on that portion? Good. Okay, page 15 for the GIS. GIS.
GIS is the same, just increased salary, what was recommended.
Okay, simple enough. Any questions? Okay, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
I think Candace is screwing up this. You keep putting people with the same name back to back.
I just realized that.
On the sheriff, Nelson. I'm gonna call you sheriff, sir. Okay,
Questions, go.
questions, go. That's right. What do we got?
Well, like I mentioned a couple meetings ago, I'm requesting a couple extra deputies to keep up with the workload that we have. As far as the rest of the budget, salary wise, I just increased according to the we talked to Candy of the recommendations. The increase basically is the 2 new deputies. But along with that, when Candy and I visited, that can be reduced, that amount, because I included insurance, medical insurance, and she said that's not where it comes from, but I wanted to make sure I counted for it. So whatever those amounts we can reduce out of that salary amount with that I added. And I separated the 2, the current deputies are the ones at the top number, and then that 120 I think is for the add-on. But that's the number that can be reduced probably, 30,000, 40,000 probably. But it's gotta come from somewhere, so I wanted to make sure, that we accounted for it. Does that make sense? And then the rest, well, I don't think we need to add cars at this point. I think I can get by with what we're doing normally, 2 a year, because of our maintenance has been so low that I think I can just add 2 and we keep 2 longer. So I don't think but I have to add all the equipment for 2 cars, which comes up to about just under 30,000 for equipment for both cars.
30,000 apiece.
30,000 a piece, I think, yeah. Well, when we start adding up costs, the new radio system is 5,000 to 6,000 for a car radio. $5,000 for a in-car video. There's $10,000 right there. Light bars 2,000, cages 1,000. It adds up in a very short period of time. And then we added like the equipment, the equipment for the deputy himself into the equipment supplies as well. Other than that, everything pretty much stayed as is, because we're doing okay, I think.
So doing rough math, we'd be right above $1 million dollars for 2021.
I don't know what that number is.
On a rough basis.
It's 101,976 That's at 90,000 versus the 120. For clarity's sake, so you're saying we're just gonna add 2 additional vehicles, we're not gonna swap out 2 old ones?
So I currently have 6.
Yep.
We're just gonna add 8. We're not gonna sell 2 next year.
Yeah.
We're just gonna keep them for another year, and then we'll just put it all in the natural rotation.
Okay.
Because we are not having maintenance issues, we're not having, our vehicles our mileage is that high. I think we can just absorb and without having to purchase 4 vehicles this year, and swap out 2 and then keep, so I think we can do it.
We're gonna put more miles on our oldest vehicles, and then we'll just put it on the road.
Yeah, we're not gonna be any worse for wear. They are causing us mechanical issues. We maintain them very well, so they are lasting us better.
Okay. Reasonable.
Why aren't we dropping that drug task force?
The other counties don't want to do it, so they're done. I'm not gonna push it anymore. The other 4 counties don't want to spend the extra money to add another position. So we're back to our half of the deputy.
Wasn't that quite busy?
Yeah, that's why I was pushing it. The other county said, no, we aren't gonna do that, so Benson, Nelson, Fowler, and Cavalier said they don't think they want to do it, so unless we want to take them over all of ourselves, but I don't think that's fair, because then whether their membership fees are, basically picking up the other half of our deputy at this point, and if we take it over completely, which we could, but because it's all our problem.
Who's telling you, the sheriffs or the county?
We had a board meeting with all the sheriffs, and that's who basically it came from.
What would have been their last year on, was it 15 across the board, 15 grand?
They were paying, right now, I think they're paying 8, and I think theirs would have gone, well, we would have increased for the full salary, which would have been roughly 55,000, I think, Candy, I figured. And then their shares would have gone from 8 to probably 15
A piece?
each, yeah. So it'd been about a 6,000 or 7,000 increase for, because it wouldn't have quite been that much, it's probably 12. It would have gone up from 8 to 12. And I can't make them do it.
We stepped up last year and put this program in place.
Yes, we did. I don't know what to, I don't know,
Hope nobody's gonna tell me the drug problems went away.
it has none. But I can't force it, I mean, we can sure step up and take the whole position, but, then, they're just paying money for, we're not gonna get any extra help. Because they want, they'll only fund half a position, and they're still spinning our wheels.
Terry, what do you think we should do?
The drug problem definitely, as Sheriff Nelson indicates, has not gone away. I think it's an important position. I wasn't aware that the other counties had said they weren't going to be involved in sharing of it.
Well, they'll share their half, but they just don't want to share it more, is what I'm getting told. They'll keep paying our half, for what they're currently doing, but they just don't want to go to that third position and pay that extra for, they didn't complain about paying the half of the salary. They just didn't want to pay any more for a third, where we would take over the second position full-time, and they would take over, the four of them together would take over that one position, instead of just a half of one.
They'll pay half of the third one.
They'll pay half, no, they're paying half the second one, but they didn't want to pay for a fourth of the third one.
So there's,
Does that make sense?
I got it, yeah,
There's that first.
It took a while, but it's.
So right now, the drug task force is 2 officers, correct?
We have Travis Zahn, who is the BCI, the full-time BCI, who's the director, or basically running the program. And then the city has one that took him over full-time, and we have one that we have half-time, and the other 4 counties pay the other.
So it's a 3-person, so
Three-person, yeah.
So under this budget, they're gonna go back to just 2?
We've only ever had 2. We've never had 3.
Travis is, I'm saying.
Travis is BCI, he's paid by the state.
So we're gonna go from 2 to 1, or we're gonna stay at 2?
We're gonna stay at 2.
It's just they're not gonna pay their.
They're not gonna pay to go to the third one.
Okay.
We're gonna stay at 2.
I was just trying to get it wrapped my head.
No, we're staying at 2, but I think we need third, and I haven't put it, and they said no, so I can't force them to.
Well, and Sheriff Nelson is right. I mean, even just recently, we're seeing fentanyl in the area. And that certainly has come across from a few states over, and they're not, the load, the caseload is not decreasing by any means. So.
Maybe even pitch it that they could hire somebody and have them stationed in Candy. Because one of the other counties is gonna have to step up and take that employee, like we did when we went to the second person. We had to step up and take responsibility for that employee, even though we're only paying half their salary. One agency has to take over, the fiscal responsibility. And then the other agencies just pay, we all pay, actually all pay the city for the whole thing. I mean, even our deputies pay, we pay the city devil's leg money because they do the task force funding. But yeah, I tried. And I think it's direly needed, but until they decide to come to me and say we need more, I don't see any point of us keeping that money there. It's a waste of our money just sitting there doing nothing, because, I'm not gonna spend it for something else. That's 15 grand that we added on there, I believe, to help, take over that full-time position. And the 4 counties wouldn't come up with 15, I think they're paying 8,000 each, so 8 times, let's see that number. They're paying about 32,000, so they have to go to about 44 or 45. Of course, then you have the others, but, so that's what kibosh that, and I'm stuck. I don't have any problem with taking it full-time, but that's not fair to us either. Because then that money that they're paying is just going to the task force. Well, the task force is doing okay financially, because they get enough grants and other things for vehicles and equipment, and, when they get some of the grant money through the BCI. So we really aren't funding any operational money. We're just funding the employee.
But it's not like, I would agree with you, that it's a cost to the county, but the thing is if we don't have a drug task force person and it's needed, then you're paying the same costs or more in societal damage down the road.
I agree.
Right?
I agree
So-
on that, and that's why I've been pushing to get the third guy on here. But, unless we add one full-time guy ourselves, and then still pay a half of one plus the other 4 counties paying, we're struggling. I mean, we're putting a lot of man hours in there, and I'm okay with that too, but, we need to still be responsible for, we could just take over that second position and pay it fully, it'd only be 15 grand, basically. But then the 8,000 that these other counties are paying, but then again, here's the deal. So, right now, if I need my deputy, that's our responsibility, and I need him to go patrol, because I'm short, I can pull him at any time and say, you're coming to work for me today. We need to go do this. Pull him off the 4 task force and use them
I
as
understand that.
so if we do a full-time one, I don't try to do that, but, if we have a full-time guy, we don't try to do that. But I just don't get why they wouldn't like for it, but.
Wow, we just have to take it on ourselves. We don't want to downsize our drug task force.
We aren't gonna downsize, we're just not gonna grow.
You're not gonna keep up with demand.
We're not gonna keep up with, they're gonna be overworked, and they're gonna be is what's happening.
And then they're gonna burn out.
Yep, so 2 or 3 years down the road, they're gonna be tired of it, and then we're gonna have to train somebody. But, and at that point, it's my decision to rotate somebody else in and bring them back to the road. I mean, we have that option, it's not getting rid of anybody, but now you have a new training curve, and
Did they give you a reason why they didn't want it?
they just didn't think they had the budget. They didn't, the commissioners work for it, and I can't guarantee it, vote for any of that, but.
See, my thought would be that, okay, you got Camden, you got all these other little cities. Okay, so you're not getting bused there. You're doing business there.
No, our guys are going up there and getting busted.
Yeah, but the busts aren't happening there. Maybe they're looking at it like, well, Devil's Lake's getting the bust, and they're not busting these people in Camden.
Cavalier and Nelson last said that they don't feel they're getting their bang for their buck because we are up there enough, but they never call us to get us up. And that was kind of the whole reason for the third one, that third one could be stationed in Andy or Langdon, and they could just work that, so we can guarantee that they get better usage out of our, and lighten up some of our guys down here. So, anyway, I don't know what else to say, I mean, we're trying. If you want to keep it in there, I'd be more than happy to keep it in there, and fund them full-time, and maybe that'll put some pressure on the other counties, but I don't know what the sheriffs are telling their commissioners. I wasn't at their commission meetings when we told them to last.
I think everybody knows how I feel.
But I've been working on this for we missed the deadline last year, so I did it hard again this spring, trying to get it in so we can start asking and laying the groundwork, and then we had our meeting in March, and they all said, no, we don't think we're ready. So Travis and I just talked about this, we might as well take that money out, but it's not doing any good, and nobody else wants to go, so. I still like to see it grow, because we need to.
So what would be the cost, do you think, Gus, if we put it all in as a budget of a full-time trust?
We'd have to have 15,000, and we could take over that employee.
No, but I'm saying, if we wanted, so we could stay at 40, do the cost share on the one, and if we wanted to add one to make, to have that growth, we would have to.
Only about 55,000 we figured for one full-time employee, county insurance. We start them if it's a new person, we start them at a new wage, which is roughly 40,000 salary-wise, 41.
Then we need another vehicle and everything?
Well, no, because they have unmarked vehicles, but that would have to be figured in somehow.
And like you said, there is some grant funding, so maybe you can find some
Well,
grant
that's one,
funding.
their grant money is done by March, and it's awarded probably in June. But that's something we could work on, that's.
Well, we need to put it in the budget.
What we do, but like I said, I didn't want to leave it in there when I don't have support from the other counties either. I didn't want.
Well, I guess, I just feel we need to add it to Ramsey County. What's the rest of the commissioners?
I agree 100%. I mean, I don't want to go backwards.
I
I
don't
don't want to even sit neutral. I want to move forward. I want to make this.
They are doing a very good job, but they are so overworked.
You did.
I I think at least right now, we put it in, and then we see
We
where
can
we're
always,
at.
you know. Yeah, I'm okay, I would really like to see that happen, but I didn't feel right coming to the commission and having it in there without, you know, the support of the other counties.
So in other words, that drug task force line would have to go from 40 to 95 then?
Yep,
That's okay?
And that would-
For now? Yeah, and see where we're at.
that would maintain us at half of one deputy plus a full-time other second deputy. Our half of the one that's currently there, plus the other counties paying the other half, and then we add one position. Correct?
State's attorney and, yeah, state's attorney and the sheriff are all telling us it's needed. I think we need to do it.
And I hate to open your eyes, but we haven't talked about the issues going on in Benson County, just south of us. And we get a lot of
You want to
requests
talk to the commissioners over there?
to go down. Yeah, I don't care what happens. I mean, I gotta rely on the sheriff, because I'm not gonna go ask their commissioners. You know, I volunteered to come with them when they request that. So I'll come with you and explain. And they all pretty said, no, we'll see. And then they came back to the meeting and Candy said, no, and Benson was kind of a little bit, but Nelson, I don't think he even asked. I'm not sure.
I can't imagine board of commissioners knowing the truth and saying no.
I can't either.
But we have Spirit Lake begging us. They are willing to pay money to come out and work on the reservation as a task force.
I believe it.
We can't do that. We cannot do that. We cannot do that, no matter, because we do not have the manpower. We would never be outside of that reservation. We would be so inundated, and we're inundated now, which is what we're doing right now. They're working hard. Would you agree?
They're working very hard.
But if we added the reservation, we would never see them in Ramsey County again, because they'd constantly be working on, down south. We're already working down there too much in my book already, because that's where everything leads. I mean, everything comes to town to make a deal here, and they drive out to the casino and make the change because it's federal jurisdiction. Well, you know,
They have really a lack of law enforcement out there.
and they do, and they know that.
They're very short staffed.
Anyway, so I'm completely behind you if you wish to do that. I agree and I commend you for making that, because that's what needs to happen in my book.
I agree with that, put it in there for now.
Yeah, I think we put it in there so we have it in the prelim, and then we can decide where we're
We
gonna
can
go from
decide
there,
in a
but at
couple
least we have the money
months
budgeted, and we'll have to see where we're gonna go come
And then,
October, but it's, I think it's worthwhile putting it in for now, at least.
okay, I agree, and I completely support that. Because I've been working on this for a year and a half, trying to get an extra person, because we need it.
What was that bottom line then?
It's gonna add 55,000 on top of
So
that.
it's gonna go from 40 to 95, right?
So that, yeah, so then the total budget moves up to 1,074,769.
And the equipment and stuff we could deal with for that with the two task force, I believe. So, we could, you know, I think they could handle like guns and weapons and vests and
1,074,769. So an increase from last year of 191,000.
maybe this will help push the other counties to step up. too.
Well, I mean, at the end
Let
of the
'em
day, we rely on the other
I know.
counties to try to
I know
help with
tomorrow.
stuff, but if they're not gonna step up, then we just have to take care of what we need to take care of.
We do, and I think this is a very valuable step that we need to move forward with. You know, when we first came up with this, 5-6 years ago, that we knew we had a need, and it wasn't long before we had to have the second, well, now we need to have the third. So,
And it hasn't decreased.
it has not decreased.
Be great if it was less workers.
Well, yeah, but obviously, you know, we need another guy
I agree.
to keep up with the.
Well, and part of the argument I agree with completely is if you burn somebody out, then all you're gonna do is have to either cycle them out or you're gonna lose them, and then you're gonna spend time training another
You gotta
person.
train
And
another,
then
and it
those
takes time
costs,
and effort.
those costs aren't in the budget, but they're always there.
Yes.
So you're better off staffing up, so you're actually staffing
And
correctly,
you
so you don't burn out.
can't just walk over to the task force and expect to know what's going on in the first 2 to 3 months at a minimum, if not maybe 5 or 6, before you actually get productive and going. So it's not a simple, just a step over and go. Because you've got to develop your contacts, you develop your CIs, you develop your, all that, so, yeah. Well, thank you for that, that's good to hear.
Okay, and any other questions for Steve?
Do we have a And I'm sure you do with the number of calls, stops, and arrests.
Do we have a number?
Yeah,
No, I don't have a number.
well, not with you, but I'm sure you have those numbers that, because sooner or later, somebody's gonna ask, you know, justifying another 2-3 employees. You know, do we have crime statistics to justify the increase in those type of
No. Most of our increases are because of time.
But you
We have
don't
increased transports, we have increased warrant, people we're picking up, we have
Yeah.
increased civil process stuff. It's not so much because we don't have time to do a lot of traffic work right now. Where you're gonna get the arrests for the, you know, the things that you're talking about. The citations and because we're either running here or running there, we're just you know. I can give you an example today about an issue that was huge, that we're having to deal with, so. Yesterday, they filed an emergency committal order. Oh, you don't have to take them till tomorrow, which is today. So, here we go, we're in Jamestown today, you know. I had to call somebody on a day off and we'll get it done. And at the same time, oh, by the way, guess what, you gotta pick this guy up from James River Correction after we'd already left. So I got a guy on his way back to Jamestown tonight, then coming back. That's just today. And it's happening more, and that's where the frustration from, you know, where the increase is coming from is because we're having trouble keeping up with just doing those things. Not necessarily, that's why I'm trying to give you an honest answer, Jeff, about, I can't say that our DUIs are increased. Most of our drug work is going to the task force, you know, the guys find it and they'll help, but, you know, the arrests aren't necessarily, and I understand exactly your question.
Yeah.
How do you justify the fact that we need more help? Well, you know, it's just, there aren't typically calls where I can say, you know, guess what, you know, well, we have to get this guy to court today. And, you know, the other day we missed the court date by 15 minutes, and because all of our guys were busy. And the judge called and said, well, how come you aren't here? Well, they're busy, they're on calls. Really? What calls are they on? He questioned the fact that, you know, well, one was on a accident, one was on a fire call, the other one was a court-ordered putting on a bracelet for somebody. Everybody said, we'll get there as soon as we can, but they're all, you know, we were there within 15 minutes, but still, you know, there isn't a call sheet or a request that I can prove to you what number-wise how to justify that. Does that make sense?
It does, but in a way it doesn't. You know, if you're not keeping track of where that at, you know, people, you know, if they want that extra patrol. You know, they want to feel that security, they want to see the visibility of those officers out. And if we're adding 2 or 3 additional ones, well, why are we, you know?
Because we're trying to increase the fact that we have them here in the county and they're actually doing work.
I understand that and realize that, but, you know, if they're, you know, gee, I step out of my house in Edmore, Starkweather, or Southam, and, you know, I never see anybody out there. You know, those are the kind of things that we hear as taxpayers.
I agree.
You know, as commissioners from people that are paying taxes and going, well, why are you increasing this so much? So if you have those crime statistics or numbers that Carrie has in her court cases and things like that, you know, those are very justifiable things, and I know we have those.
Well, I can get you that, I can get you what we've done.
You know, because I know you guys are busier than
But they're not gonna justify their increase, I don't believe either.
Yeah.
Because we're trying.
Boots on your ground,
Yeah.
but your boots are running to Jamestown, to Bismarck,
Right.
to wherever.
And that's.
You need the boots on the ground in Edmore.
And with all the other stuff we're doing, we can't keep a guy. You know, my goal is to have somebody working Starkweather, Hamden, Edmore, Rocket, Lawton every day.
Right.
But I can't keep them up there because we can't get them up. I don't have enough to get up there because we keep getting called back down. You know, I understand completely what you're saying, and I agree with you. But that's what I'm trying to accomplish is, okay, yeah, Churches Ferry and Penn are gonna see somebody at least every day, at a minimum. And same thing with you know, up north, I don't like it, and that's kind of why I'm here. Is I want more people to see our cars driving around up there, because in my mind, visually seeing a cop, I don't care if he's not even stopping cars, just driving by your house
Right.
means something.
Well, it gives you
It's
that
a security.
It gives you that sense of safety and security, and you know, and that people want to be able to feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd be just as happy without a crime if they stop at your house and say, hey, how's it going? Just driving by, anything going on, you know, have a shake, visit for two, and then, okay, have a good day, or you're out in the field. Hey, you just stopped having lunch, they pull in and say, hey, how's it going?
Always welcome.
And that's what I preach to these guys, is just stop here and stop there, but we need to be able to get there, and that's kind of where I'm struggling.
Yeah. Well, I understand, I know with all the transports and things like that, you guys are overwhelmed. But it's one of the questions that we get asked.
Yeah, but I hope that gave you enough of an answer, but.
Yeah. So, thank you.
But it's not necessarily, you know, I don't think our crime statistics are gonna justify the things I'm talking about. I just, you know, it just.
Not today, but 5 years from now.
But you know what? Right now, we're actually keeping up, except for a day here and a day there. But once we go back from this stuff, we're gonna be running again, real hard.
Well, some of it, it's tough to justify staffing issues to a point too. I mean, you have, every county's gonna be different depending on circumstances. Do you have your jail in county? I mean, where do you have to haul people to go to court dates? Where do they, you know, how large is your county in terms of patrol? How many small communities do you have? I mean, every issue is gonna be different. I mean, at the end of the day, the justification, I guess, is, and I understand where it's coming from, but the justification is if the sheriff says we need additional help because he's having to call people in on their day off, we need additional help.
Do it all the time.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's acceptable, it certainly isn't Lynn, and I know you guys are overworked, but I mean, I shouldn't be able to drive 140 miles an hour to Edmore and back every day and not ever be worried about getting pulled over.
Guess what? Your chances are pretty good right now.
Is that what you've been doing?
I already know. That's okay.
He's got a fast.
But that also brings in the question, I just had a conversation with the highway patrol yesterday and again today, that they aren't keeping their people here. So we don't have their cars around to do the traffic stuff. So we're covering more accidents, we're covering more, you know, and we can't do we can't patrol for the street, you know, like we should.
Well, and that's been a statewide issue for quite some time, is the reduction in staffing with the HP. It's been left up to county sheriff departments to provide that extra visibility, extra patrol, extra traffic stops, extra response to accidents, different things like that, so.
Well, they'll still respond to a fatality accident, but you know what, the rest are all yours.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have this, you know, you take an accident, it takes 3 hours out of your day. And if we have another call and it's the only guy I have, I mean, now what do we do? You know, and that's part of the issue too, is the state is reducing their force, which is creating, you know, Langdon has already lost their trooper, Rolla's lost their trooper, Dakota lost their guy. You know, they're pulling out because they're saying they don't have the, well, you know what? It's not all about numbers all the time, it's more about being seen, and crime prevention is part of that in my book. If at 2 o'clock today you go through Edmore and you see the sheriff's car come by, oh, well then tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock you see it, oh, wait a minute, we don't know when they're coming. That's huge. I mean, it's well, we need to get more of that, and I really try to get them up north, but you know, I could get a guy up to Starkweather there, oh, guess what, come on back, we gotta send you to, you know, gotta do this, we have to send this guy here, so you gotta do this, you know, and it's frustrating. And that's kind of why, you know, I'm asking for the increase.
Answered my question perfectly, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any additional discussion, questions for Steve?
Thank you very much, Steve.
I really do appreciate what you do for us, so.
Thank you.
We got your back.
I know you do, and I appreciate that greatly.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever you can do for us, great. I understand that too, so.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, you're up.
All right, should we go on the budget first?
Yeah, might as well. Not that open. Your last one for the day, let's take.
Let's see, the numbers are some insurance, the math,
My blacktop one.
23.
Last year was our paving project on two on there, so we don't have a active project this summer, so that's quite a bit reduced. But I do have 50,000 in there for the design engineering on our overlay project for 2022. It'll be designed in 2021 and that cost is 50,000. Also the bridge south of Doug Freegee, design work on that, not the construction, but the design is 90,000. So together they got on the pad up to 140. Any questions there? Nope. All right. My next page is County Road. Yep. Okay. Salary, a little bit increase, we just went with the 2% and step increase. My wage and Brent's wage come out of that fund. Fixed charges, I did raise a little, again, that's just where we're at. Self-insurance. That's it. Capital outlay, that includes equipment rental, like for when we rent equipment from Ironhide or whoever, that's 40,000. And not so much the bridge, when we do bridges, that rental comes out of another fund. Any other? Culverts that we resale, that's 100,000, that comes out of that line item. And then I have in there 200,000 for a single axle 4x4 plow truck. That's 170,000 and another. This year I had budgeted for pickup and I decided not to get it because we have too many other expenses come up. So I put it in again this year at 30,000. The next one, construction. This year, we took our lift overlay project out of there, so that's, we don't have a project this year, so that's considerably reduced, but what we do have is graveling of Turback 17, up by Sparkler. Townships pay for 25% of that, so 75% we pay, and the total cost is 42,000. Tank water is 10,000. Repair soft spots is 15,000. And overlay patches is 75,000, which adds up to the 142,000. The next line is miscellaneous. That's, I just put that in there every year, or it's 200,000. We always have projects that come up through the year. Like when we did the truck route, that was about 90,000. Those types of projects come up. We don't want to choose all that money, but that's what that one is. Nothing specific, whatever might come up during the year. So that total is $880,000. But there really isn't any. I had some carryover, and we get money generated townships for blading roads on their summer contracts. So there is no mill levy going to that.
Almost half of what you requested last year, right?
Yeah, because of that overlay project, it's about $1 million. So that's.
So there'll be no mills to fund that 80 then?
Correct. The next page, road equipment.
Best looking budget I've seen all day.
But I honestly gotta say that we don't have a big overlay project, and that's why it looks that way, so that helps.
Road equipment, that's all been zero. County bridge.
County bridge, that's where we use the money to replace our bridges. Culvert, provide the culverts, under 95,000. And that's where there's a line item for equipment rental there, and that's where we rent our excavator and trench tractor there, for 12,000. So a total of 107,000.
Any questions?
My next page is highway tax. Wages, salaries were decreased this year because of Nick's retirement and his replacement not making the same wage. So that's reduced there. Overtime is in that. Well, that's the next one. Next line item, or next item down, overtime, so that's 30,000. Fixed charges again is, health insurance and benefits, so I raised that a little bit. Actually, almost gonna be unemployment, that's in case we get like, somebody that wants to file for unemployment and have to pay that benefit. So the last few years, we haven't had to pay for anybody's unemployment, but we did set up that line item in case it does happen. Insurance, I raised that just a little bit because of the vehicle insurance goes up. My building insurance, when we were talking about that, that's only $2,000 for all the buildings.
All cheap.
Yeah. We all outline shops, yeah, our main shop. Yeah.
They did us a pretty good deal.
Right.
Travel.
Travel, I lowered that because I actually thought I was gonna be paying for part of my travel for NACO, and I didn't, so that I didn't have to pay for any travel for NACO, so I reduced that. Utilities, I did raise a little bit for electricity, heat, not knowing what that's gonna be. Garbage probably went up more too. Office supplies, did figure a new computer in there and some other miscellaneous things, so that went up 5,000. Oh, I put in there for safety equipment, $4,000 for safety equipment on that. Like clothes, reflective clothing, that kind of stuff. Gas, oil, and fuel, actually lowered that. Right, gas prices are down, fuel prices are down from last year. So hoping that stays the same, or hoping they stay down, put it that way. Supplies and materials, I raised that a little bit, that's for like, gravel, hot mix. Cutting edges are in there. Snow blades are in there, filters, tires, I raised tires a little bit, because, we're gonna be, having to put some tires on motor graders again. List all the ones that are on there. One is, gravel is 25,000, sand, 2,500, riprap is 2,500, cutting edges, the one of the major ones is 23,000, snow blades is 10,000, filters, believe it or not, are 10,000. Tires is the one that raised up to 25,000. coal oil for like crack sealing, 30,000. Hot mix to fix potholes, it's 5,000. Antifreeze and engine oil and hydraulic oil, like when we service out the motor graders, that type of thing, 20,000. Signs and posts, 15,000. And then shop supplies, tools, just materials for working on things. It's 18,000. So all that adds up to 186,000. Next one, repairs and maintenance. Actually lowered that a little bit because some of the new equipment we have. Next one, capital outlay. 25,000 of that is for building maintenance. Really no projects planned here, but things come up. And then capital outlay, I left 100,000 in there. Last year, that went down considerably because last year we bought the, or this year I should say, this year we bought the motor grader. And we won't be buying motor graders in 21, we'll be buying motor graders in 22. So that total was 1,375,140, and all that money is generated from fuel tax, revenue from vehicle sales, license plates, not sales, and licenses. So there's actually no bills tied to that. Any questions there? Okay, the next page, our chip seal program. Next year, we're chip seal and 3A, just off Camden. 9C, which is on the end of the line, way up north, by the Dakota area. And that's 475,000 for the chip seal then, 60,000 for the chips, and 100,000 for striping. And as you remember, we striped the ones that we chip seal, plus we put all our other roads on a 3-year rotation now. Chip seal program's on a 6-year rotation, stripes are on a 3-year rotation. So together they all add up to 635,000. That is a mill, 10 mills probably. Maybe it is, yeah, 10 mills. Okay. Yeah, I have flood damage. Over those, I suppose, where are those at? 32. Don't really anticipate selling anything on flood damage, but all of those funds are available to us if we need them for something. So I put them in there as spending them. Just so they're in the budget. For the last few years, we never have to use them, but we're there. 2011.
Well, it's been raining, you should keep it in there.
Noise disasters, we still have open in 2011 and 2013. I don't think we're gonna be spending anything out of there, but any questions or
Told you it was good, Kevin.
All right, thank you. I guess a part of mine is the cemeteries, which is
6,500.
yeah, I don't know how many numbers that is. We overspent that every year.
You overspend
We
that?
overspent that every year, we never get enough.
Maybe that's something we should increase, or?
That might be such a, but
that's what it is.
Cemetery, cemetery budget, he overspends that, he says every year.
Yeah, I think it's structured that way in century code, and then we set to a money in general, but. Or we probably over.
I think they're.
Yeah, it's,
Yep.
either which way, it's, we're always, yeah, we're always capped there.
I think we're over like 10.
We just toss it,
Yep.
we just do whatever. Okay. Thank you. Okay, budget, any questions on budget, I guess? Guess we can start on the agenda then. Just go over the, projects we have. The left overlay at Ramsey County 2, that has been painted now, and stop strips did get cut in on the east end. So, pretty much done, I don't know, if you got any comments?
They're getting the messages tonight for and obviously the those strips. Takes time.
Message is like the railroad crossing. The needs. It's not ours. Any questions on the Ramsey 2 project? Okay, our bridge work, that's going pretty good actually with all these rains. Just a stroke of luck as we're going through it. We got 2 of the major ones done before the rain really started, so they were in snow before the rains hit. The one I'm working on now is not a big watershed, so the rain hasn't been a big issue. And then the only one they'll have left after that is the one on the west end of Ramsey County 10, that big bridge out there.
Those are the ones that you're taking the bridges out and putting culverts in?
Our guys are doing that.
Which end of 10 is it on? West end?
West end. Kind of back where the wildlife used to be, it's way out there. A really narrow bridge there, but there's quite a bit of farm ground that we have to access around that bridge.
There is.
Yeah, quite a bit, on both sides, Towner and Ramsey. And Towner's helping share with that one.
Getting a bunch of that land worked out now.
It's actually mine, they must,
Well, they did.
but they must figure it out, how to get their equipment across, they've done it for so long, But now, once we get that in there, they'll be able to get anything across there. Actually, Towner came to me and asked if we could get that one replaced, with a farming issue. Really narrow, no guardrails at all, just deck. We'll have that one done, it should be a water issue. I mean, we'll be able to work around the water. With water, probably not good. And I haven't talked to Soapers about gravel in Ramsey 9, I haven't talked to Close about gravel in Old Church area yet either, but they haven't until the middle of September to get it done. I won't think about that one south of Church's Ferry. That road is underwater for probably close to 1,000 feet, probably 600 or 700 feet. So we won't be able to gravel where that water is for sure. But we're going to try and do both ends, of course. They can get at it by going around. They don't have to use the bridge to do the gravel. That's not what we inspected last year, or whatever it was. But yeah, there's a big stretch here of oil, 600 or 700 feet of water.
They've had some pretty big rains up there too, right?
Yeah, so open leaves, man, so leaves that have been rain.
A lot of water coming this way,
Yeah, right, all water. But we'll get as much gravel as you can, we're just gonna skip over that water spot. Okay, and then get the rest of the agenda, update on Ramsey 4, where those open cuts were made on the approaches. By the time I had gotten out there, or even talked to them on the phone, they had those walls filled in again. They put culverts in all of them, I guess you probably heard that by now. Kelsey Isaac did ask me to go out there and see if any of the new culverts were lower than the old ones. The way it looked to me, I didn't have a level transit with me or anything, but you can kind of eyeball it, like see where the water is and see how much culvert sticks above the water, you know. It didn't look like any of them were lower. 3 of them were about the same level, and 1 was higher. So there's 4 of them out there.
I was up there. They look pretty close to it. Right?
Yeah, just eyeballing, they look really close to the same level or higher. But it did definitely increase the flow. I mean, that's an issue. I'm not sure if the water board is gonna have to deal with that issue or not, but it's kind of their ballpark.
Well, if they get a complaint, but,
And I had some questions on that too, and I just directed them, I said, talk to the water board about it, because that's how that's gonna have to be in their discretion. This is what it, bring us what they have.
They didn't save their crops.
No, it's better than dead. Whatever the work they did save their beans, whatever the crop was. It's still dead.
Okay.
Okay, and then this year, our John Deere tractors have used more road ditches. They're actually a little bit bigger than past years, but leading edge wanted bigger tractors, so we sell the bigger ones, so. We're end up paying for the extra rate, the higher rate, which between the 2 tractors is almost $1,510. But they are gonna give us credit for that $1,510. We still have to pay just the low rate, but just so you guys are aware of that. We have a culvert on Ramsey 8 between David Moran's and Steve Swanson, kind of west of the lot. It's rusted out and the shoulders are all caved in. We got it fixed. And like 3 years ago, we put 2 new 60-inch arch in there. And I guess I wanted to do a hydraulic study to see if we actually need that 4-footer that's in there. Or what size we would need if we usually want to talk to Paul about it. He's actually got a task order for it, and then the cost is $4,500. So I guess we need to know what you guys think about doing that.
Do you think it's necessary?
I don't know, but it's gonna be an issue. I mean, there's residents out there that on the downside of water that want the culvert, and there are residents up there on the upside of the crossing that don't want the culvert, of course.
Let the water board take care of it?
Good. Yep.
Probably get hit for that. What do you think, Adam?
I say, if the water board will take care of it, and if not, then we can take care of it. That's the proper channel. You're supposed to take care of any kind of water addition outside it first, so ask them, I suppose.
And I have told the residents up there that that's my intention, is to see if the culvert is needed or what size will be needed before we jump into the replacement.
Okay.
Our gravel stockpile, we had some going, that's been there for probably 6 or 7 years, but it's finally gone. So I'll have to start getting some prices put together, get our stockpile built back up in the shop here. I'll bring those prices to you as I get them. And one of the hydraulic pumps on our payloader, there's actually two pumps on there, but only one of them's going out, and the estimate to replace it, for the labor and everything was $4,143.89. So I guess I'd like a motion to go ahead and get that replaced.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve, fixing the hydraulic pump on the payloader. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And on Ramsey 8 East Lot, there's been a lot of truck traffic, gravel. Townships are graveling their soft spots or black spots or whatever you want to call them, the boils. So a lot of trucks have been running over that, and there's a couple spots that really need to be fixed. And quite honestly, our crew doesn't have time to do it, so I called Warren about putting some gravel on there for us. Of course, he wasn't interested in helping pay for it. This truck's are running on that road too, but no sober stuff that's not for. But anyway, it's gonna be about $13.80 a yard, and it's gonna take about 300 yards to do it. So if you guys are okay with doing that, I can spend that money, I need a motion for that.
Move to 1380 yards, that's like $4,000.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to, gravel portions of Ramsey 28 East for soft spots. Further discussion? The guy that always called me. Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
One more thing to bring up, in Prairie, our propane tank there is only 500 gallons, all the other shops are 1,000. So we got some prices from 3 different people to buy a new tank. If we want it, we can still buy propane from anybody. So Sendak, Leeds, their bid was 3,000 even. Senex here in town, out by Sobers, their bid was 2,933, and mining oil was $2,849. Purchased it, and then they all had a fee, like $50 fee to move it. So I guess I'd like to go ahead and buy a 1,000-gallon propane tank, buy any for that low.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve, buying a 1,000-gallon propane tank for Prairie from buying on the low bid. Further discussion?
Do we own the 500 gallon one?
Huh?
Do we own the one that's there now?
We do.
That we surplus or?
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So, yeah, unless you have questions for me.
Truck road,
Yeah,
are they done hauling on that?
I believe so. I emailed I should probably call them, but I just emailed them to see if they were done. All their equipment's gone, and their portable bathroom's gone, so I'm assuming so, but I haven't heard back.
That's in tough shape.
Yeah, it's a lot worse.
Yeah, it needs to be taken care of. We need to come back and fix that. That's in,
Yeah, it's really, I have no intention to sign. We have to sign off on it.
Kevin, answer this question for me. Do you know who's contracted to put the pavement back on too?
On 2, I believe it's Gowan. That's what the sign on the highway says. It's
Gowan?
construction by Gowan, yeah. I think so.
We had the truck route in total ready for pavement, didn't we? It was ready for pavement.
Yeah, they have to put it back to that condition too. And they actually, the state actually sent me an email saying that they would, and if they had to put any more base stabilizer on it, that they would. I mean, I got an email that says that. And we did a hall road inspection beforehand, so we know how wide it was, how deep the gravel was and all that, so.
It'd be nice to get it paved, wouldn't it?
Not sure they'll go for that. They have to put it back to the commission,
You want me to ask them?
Sure.
You're thinking since they're there and
Put a steel.
Colin,
put a steel,
for the state, they're thinking.
Cow.
Yeah.
what that west route where they haul the heavy load, what a difference. I mean, you can tell which, you know, what lane they use for the loaded trucks and which the one they use for the empty trucks coming back.
And then you get past where the hall road was, and
Yep, yeah,
totally
yeah, well,
A mile and a half, huh? They tore it up,
the really bad spots, was only like a half mile, or 3/4 maybe.
where they were hauling all the way to.
but they haul them all the way.
Yeah, they haul all the way, once you get around that curve and start going south again, it's not real bad, there's a couple of little tiny spots. But it's not as bad as the east-west part. Yeah, that east-west
Should get it replaced to what it was.
yeah, that's.
Yeah, well, regardless, I mean, we gotta put pressure on them to get it done.
Absolutely.
We're gonna catch hell from people when harvest starts.
Yeah.
Cause that thing's gotta be used a ton at harvest, and if it's in that kind of shape, we're gonna catch it. So, we gotta put some pressure on it, tell them it's gotta be taken care of probably in the next 3 weeks.
That puts us at a time to declare with Valentine's even.
Yeah. I mean, it's gotta be 15th of August, it's gotta.
We should have
It's gotta be rolled up.
We should have a sit-down meeting with them.
You probably do that.
I mean, I understand having a haul out of it, but if you don't wanna do that to the road, then pick up stakes and not come back and take care of it, everybody's pretty frustrated.
Right. Anybody have any ideas on how many yards they took out of there?
3,000 loads, it was about 170, 170,000 yards.
How many loads? 8,000?
80,000 loads, yeah.
That's why I wanted to make sure the state was on board with getting this fixed before I left.
Who's out at the state office? Is that Hanson yet?
Well, he's the boss, but the email came from the guy who's doing the project, in charge of the project.
We just gotta get.
Yeah, I'll start working on that tomorrow. So they can get it done. Time and matter.
If they're fixing it back to pre-haul condition, they're gonna have it done before harvest too.
Right.
What's
So,
that
yeah,
called?
they're gonna have to work on trucks.
They're gonna have to fix the damage from harvest hall. That'd be a good reason to try to do it earlier.
That's right. Still, just get some pressure on it, tell them to take care of it, because otherwise.
It's very minimal, they should get it, so it's usable.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yes, we spent a lot of money to get that thing in good shape for that very purpose. Nice to think of it.
I heard a rumble that they're gonna do the east side down there. Not next year.
What's that?
They're doing the east side next year.
Oh,
East of it.
oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. That's next year. But I heard. Yeah. I knew it's been in the works, I didn't know here. Yeah, that's been in the works for a long time. That's when we were talking about, turn lanes. That was kind of in the works then. So that's how long it's been.
Or 6 years ago already. Okay,
I should work on it.
further questions? Thanks, Kevin, appreciate it.
Do that. I work with the water board too on that other issue.
Okay, that's good. Okay, unfinished business, COVID-19 discussion. This is our standing order of business, it seems like. Couple things that we need to talk about real quick, just in visiting with emergency manager and Crystal. There's been some questions from staff about testing protocol in terms of if we have somebody in the building suspected of being positive, how we want to handle that. just came to my attention, I should have been a long time ago in terms of I should have something about it, but, something we're gonna have to work on, how we're gonna handle it, you know, do we wanna have, you know, what's our standard protocol essentially when we do have a possible contact? You know, and Kristen's gonna be working with the clinic, talking with them, seeing how we wanna handle it along with public health, so we can have some type of protocol in place, and we'll get that hopefully put together in the next couple of weeks, would be my guess. So we go from there. The other one would be, there have been some questions from staff, and I've got questions too from outside people in the community about, you know, obviously we shut the facility down to by appointment only. At a certain point, we made the decision to then open back up again under the protocol we have currently. What is our standard to make a decision if this thing starts to ramp up again, that we're going to go back to by appointment?
Didn't we say that should be your discretion?
Yes, I realize that it's just under my purview, but I want to make sure that we have an idea of how the commission feels about it before we get to that point. So I'm not just going all of a sudden, holy crap, you know, let's shut the door, you know, let's just go by appointment again. So
Let's address that first one. Has Cass County had anybody in their courthouse test positive?
you would have to ask staff, because I honestly couldn't tell you at all. I have no clue.
There's been some counties that have,
There is. How did they handle it?
I think they followed what the doctor was recommending.
Quarantine and
Yeah, we have had a couple of situations where we've had individuals come into contact us. So it's just a thing, how do we want to handle it? And my thought was always, at least, you know, there's public health guidance on how to do it, but, you know, how do we, are we going to automatically, if we have a contact, are we going to say that person goes and gets tested, quarantines, and then until the test result comes back, which is generally 2 to 3 days, and then, you know, get them out of the building immediately? But the problem you're going to run into then is, say you have a person in the building, they come into contact with someone that is positive, and they've come into contact with 14 people in the building. Then what do? How many people then are going to have to be tested? How many people are going to have to quarantine? Because we could take out 20% of our staff in one possible positive contact. So how do we want to handle it? How many degrees away are we from saying, is it just the person that made contact, or the persons, I should say, that would make contact with that person that is then positive, that are going to get tested in quarantine, or is it going to be everybody that they come in contact with in addition, so like instead of first, it'll be second? So we have to have some type of an idea of how we're going to handle that. In terms of testing costs and things like that, whether it's free or it's going to be paid for through insurance or anything like that, that's not a concern. I don't think we're going to end up paying for it, or public health, or state, or whoever's going to pay for it. But we just have to have some a definite chain of how we want to handle it, just so we, you know, and there's public health, there's pretty standard public health guidance that if you come into contact with somebody and you're concerned, you get tested, we quarantine after that test for 2 to 3 days or until the test result comes back. So that's a pretty standard guidance. But then the question, like I said, comes into, okay, a contact in the building, then how do we handle how many people are we going to require then at that point to require them to test or allow them to test them? So we have to have kind of a standard put in place, something to think about, obviously. But, you know, we're starting to come into those difficulties, and I'm sure as the numbers start to ramp up a little bit more, we're probably going to come into those difficulties more. And also, depending on how things roll out with fall sports season, school, things like that, there's going to be more intermingling with individuals, which means we're probably going to have more contacts, and people are probably going to have more positive. So I think it's not a matter of if, but when. We even, and if, but when we get a positive in the building, that's one of our staff. And then how are we going to handle it, basically. So, something that, you know, if you have any guidance, I'll work with Chris and Crystal, and we'll try to come up with how that's going to work from a HIPAA guideline, as well as, employment standards and things like that. And you guys have anything you want to add on this topic? You guys can just chip it if you want to.
Yeah, no, our main concern was our
essential employees that you can't be without that certain department because the county just won't be able to function without it. So they're real crucial. We just want to make sure we're getting it taken care of before something bigger comes about.
Well, the big part of this is the things that we can't think of that are gonna happen. Sometimes we gotta just react to the situation.
Of course.
Cross that bridge and get there, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, but it's just a matter of having some type of an idea of what we're gonna do, so we at least have some type of, I mean, there's no certainty in any of this, but at least have some type of plan. I mean, and the problem we're gonna run into is that you could be doing everything possible, you know, to make sure that nothing happens, but if the other person that you happen to run into isn't, then stuff happens. You know, and we've been lucky up to this point in North Dakota that we're, like we talked about, socially distanced and isolated, and we haven't had a large caseload, but, you know, we've had an increase this past few weeks in numbers, and it's, you know, something we're gonna have to probably deal with at some point, especially now that we're all gonna get stuck back inside here in another, what, 2 months, 3 months, it's gonna be better. Probably, but was it January
So
21st?
are we asking, are you asking, what do we do when we have somebody test positive in the building?
No, I'm not asking specifically when we have somebody test positive. I'm just giving you a heads up that we're gonna have to put together guidance and bring it to the next commission meeting. If we have an individual in our staff test positive, it's a pretty straightforward procedure. I mean, they test positive, then you follow the public health guidance. If they've been in the building and had any kind of contacts, the contact tracing will occur, and all of those people that'll have to get tested and they'll have to quarantine or until they get their test results back, and then they show a negative. So that's a pretty standard procedure. The question is when we have, you know, we have court happening, we have all kinds of people coming into the building to utilize public health or social services. What happens when we all of a sudden find out later, a day or two later, that person was positive that came into the building?
And it's gonna take 2 days for his test.
Yeah, so then all of a sudden that person was positive, we found out they're positive, then all of a sudden we've got a person that had contact. How many people did they have contact with? So who then are we going to require to quarantine or test while they were here?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part about that, I mean, the day that you run into someone who's got it, you're very likely not going to be able to spread it yourself.
Yes.
But 2 or 3 days later, after you've been in contact with someone who's got it, you know, then you are very contagious. So the real problem would be is like you're saying, it's not so much how many people did you run into in that same day, it's how many people did you run into over the next 2 or 3 days before you even found out that they were positive to have sensitive test.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and the science is developing, but it's not perfect. We're learning more stuff about the virus every single day. I tend to err on the side of caution and the side of the employees. If they feel like they have a concern, like they might have had ran into somebody that had a positive, or they knew somebody that had a positive that they might have had contact with, take the test, let along with quarantine, work from home, until we know that they're feel safe.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to go about it.
That's kind of where I'm at on it, but I just wanted to run it past you guys so we could at least have a thought process about it. And we'll work on a formalized policy, but in the meantime, we'll deal with things as they come, I guess. That's about all we can do, you know. It's gonna be case by case until we figure it out, I guess, so. Yeah, that and the by appointment, or the by appointment protocol, like you said, it's in the hands of the chair, but I still want to come up with at least some type of a standard, so at least we have an idea, so everybody has an idea of, all of a sudden you don't, you know, it's a Tuesday on September, what, we're going to by appointment again? So everybody knows what's happening. Well, I just want to make sure we have information for everybody, so more to come in the next meeting or two, and we'll go from there. Anything to chime in, to add in? Okay, thank you.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
do we have, so how quickly are things getting done, testing wise? Where are the tests at?
You talking turnaround?
Well, turnaround, our test being done, yeah, I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking, but,
You're saying does, essentially, does the testing protocol, would they allow you to get a test in a situation like that, is what I think you're trying to ask.
right.
Do you meet the protocol for them to give you a test?
Sure.
And that's something we have to contact the health providers as well as work with public health on, so we know that what their parameters are for when a test is required or recommended or allowed. And then we can figure out exactly how we're gonna allow this to work out. But generally speaking, you get a test, it comes back in 2 to 3 days, depending on how backed up the state lab is.
Because we are seeing, Lake Region District Health is doing a test in Leeds.
Yep.
Or they're doing one in Rugby, or, but say, what happens if somebody wants a test, and do they go through their private insurance? Is that private insurance or that healthcare provider saying, well, no, you really don't need a test, well, let's make you an appointment, or kind of thing, because you happen to know, Cass County, somebody needed a testing positive or had the positive symptoms, but it was Sanford that said, well, we have you down for a test next week, let's wait till then. And then Sanford sent that test to Sioux Falls. It was a week later before Sioux Falls got back to them. And by that time it was, well, yeah, you were positive, but it's been 14 days, so you're good.
Yeah. I agree with that.
By the way, who were you contacting?
By the way, who are you in contact with?
And there's no doubt that that's obviously frustrating.
So,
All I can do is speak to what I know has been happening here, I guess. When they did the mass testing, when I went through, it was 2 to 3 days. They did testing in Edmore. Yeah. They did testing in Edmore on Friday, and I think all the results were back in yesterday. So the turnaround at the state lab has been pretty good, as well as the private.
So state lab, so if you're seeing a test being conducted in Leeds, for example, and that's state run, you don't have to go through your private healthcare provider, you're not going to send it down to some far off lab that's maybe going to take you a week.
Well, it depends on what each healthcare provider is utilizing a different lab.
Right.
Yeah, Sanford is utilizing all their own labs in-house. I saw just yesterday in the form that Sanford actually just added an additional set of machines, so they're going to be able to double capacity in the next couple of weeks once they get the machines up running and testing. So that 7-day, they're trying to alleviate that 7-day wait time that they run into, because they just haven't been able to run enough tests. So, but generally speaking, it's been 2 to 3 days is the hope. But basically the guidance is, once you get that test, if you think you could be positive, quarantine and sit at home until you get a definite negative. So,
Problem arises, how many people you're in contact with?
yeah, and like Lucas said, the part of it is that first day you have contact, you're probably not contagious at that point yet, is what the science is showing. But after that, then all of those contacts, so that's why if you think you might have had a contact, you should get tested and go sit at home for 3 weeks, just to make sure, But it's a tough medium between one of our employees to be able to utilize the facility and work, and at the same time keep the people safe. So, why we just have to have kind of not a standard, but a flexible policy in place so we can, give guidance when we need guidance. So it's something we'll work on these next couple of weeks.
So right now, no additional changes or from what we've had before?
I wouldn't think so, not at this
Okay.
point. I still technically.
Okay.
But I just wanted to give everyone a heads up, that that's something we've been talking about.
But although this isn't guidance, I'd say because of the fact that there's asymptomatic transmission, I would want to err on the side of caution too. It makes me think of the old movie The Thing, right? Where if you don't know who is the thing, everybody else is the thing.
It's kind of the same thing, right? Who has COVID, we gotta assume they all have COVID. I tested negative, but that was a month and a half. Maybe I passed.
How many people have you ran into in the last 6
We don't
weeks?
believe hear anybody's got it.
Okay, anyway, we'll move on. Review letter on section line.
Township approval first.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and the other,
So that's right, we have
the
Terry
other
here,
thing I
so.
just wanted to point out too, this letter that came, so closing section lines, roads and things like that is under 2407 in the century code. There's specific requirements for the petitions. There's some flaws in this letter.
Okay.
So, once they go through that, address that, it would come back here. If it was an appropriate petition at that point, then we have some things to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for full disclosure, this individual contacted me and I talked to Kerry about it and I just gave him the guidance, go look at century code and this is where it is and figure out how you're supposed to do it.
But the township's gotta approve it first, right?
Well, I don't necessarily think so. What would happen is if the petition was properly presented to the Board of Commissioners, then there would be a hearing that would be set up. The township would come and talk to that hearing about their thoughts on it as well, but they would need to have, he's got a few things in here that he's missing. So there is
We closed that one up at Rocket,
descriptions.
and we had the
that are
township approval before we did.
But when we were supposed to have a hearing?
missing. Well, we did have one.
We did it.
We did have one. Yeah.
Just nobody showed up aside
Right.
from.
Right, and we might, and it never hurts for them to get it beforehand, but specifically, they have some things that need to be in the petition that aren't in this letter, under that section of the century code,
I'd like to see the township approval also,
so.
before it comes to us. If they got a problem, that takes us out there.
So how do we handle it then, I guess would be the question.
Well, the reality is what is contained in the letter doesn't comply with various provisions in 2407. Either they have to read through the entire 2407, or they have to seek legal counsel on how to do it properly.
So who
You
tells,
don't have
my
to
question is
have
who
an
tells
attorney.
the individual that?
Sure. The state's turn, right?
You're gonna send them a letter?
I can,
Okay.
I can, yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I wanna make, because again, we've talked about giving legal advice or
Right.
something that can't happen from one of us up here because we are the board that will make the decision.
Right.
So one of the staff, preferably obviously the state.
Well, and I can't give legal advice
No.
to a citizen, but I can say it doesn't comply with
Exactly.
these sections, you should talk to someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'll send a letter out Thursday to them.
awesome.
Okay.
We need a motion to that effect, or is it okay if we just allow it?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to direct the state attorney to send a letter back for clarification on the section line question. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull same sign. Motion carries. Senate authorization.
Move to approve.
Second. That was the quickest motion ever. Further discussion?
It was just a review.
Yep. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Visitors delegation. Nobody's online, crickets. Okay, announcements, anybody got announcements? Anything fine?
One thing really quick, and I'll pass this on down the line, is State Commissioner, Water Commission posted meetings. Every basin has a commissioner. It's by state law, they have to have a commissioner hosted meeting. There's the schedule. Devils Lakes meeting, Dick Johnson is the State Water Commission representative. He will host a meeting online next Monday, the 27th. And the other one is what the agenda follows. So they'll basically go through the funding or lack thereof for water projects within the state. If you have any questions or concerns of the water project you'd like the state help with, whether it be a rural water system, flood control, something to that effect, that'd be the time to bring it up. I plan on bringing up a little thank you for operating the outlets. Please turn them back on when they're water quantity in Cheyenne will allow and 11 bucks because we've had 8.5 inches of rain and some places more within the basin just in July. So that's it, that's all I have for announcements.
I'll piggyback that on that and say that 8.5, we've had 11 plus since July 1st and 14 plus since June 1st. So it can slow down anytime now.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that people are more tired of talking about than COVID is rain.
That's right.
So, thank you.
Okay, any other announcements?